Brought to you by Bookspots.com.
The Golden Quest of Samudhram. This fictional novel has been written by Srinidhi Ranganathan, the king of digital marketing. Happy listening.
Amidst the verdant embrace of the outskirts of the lush forests of Boripura, King Srihari stood with regal poise, his noble bearing softened by a rare glimmer of emotion in his eyes. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the landscape, the air alive with the scent of blooming flowers and the distant calls of forest creatures. Birds flitted through the canopy, their songs mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves. Srinidhi Ranganathan, clad in his warrior's attire, stood before the king, the weight of the impending journey already settling on his broad shoulders. His eyes, sharp and determined, reflected the resolve that had earned him the king's trust. Yet, beneath the surface of his stoic demeanor, a tinge of anticipation and uncertainty brewed. King Srihari's deep voice resonated with authority and warmth as he extended the sacred map, its ancient parchment crackling softly in the gentle breeze. "Srinidhi, my brave warrior," he said, his gaze unwavering, "within this map lies the path to Samudhram, the submerged city of legend. The golden treasure it guards is not merely wealth, but the hope and future of our kingdom." Srinidhi accepted the map with reverence, feeling the weight of the responsibility that came with it. His fingers traced the intricate lines and symbols, each one a promise of peril and adventure. "I will not fail you, my king," he vowed, his voice steady and firm. King Srihari placed a hand on Srinidhi's shoulder, the gesture carrying both reassurance and a solemn charge. "This journey will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. But remember, true strength lies not only in the sword, but in wisdom and compassion. Trust in your companions and the guidance of your heart." Srinidhi nodded, absorbing the king's words. He could feel the eyes of his ancestors upon him, their legacy of honor and bravery urging him forward. "I will honor the faith you have placed in me, and I will return with the treasure that will secure our future." A moment of silence passed between them, charged with unspoken understanding. The king's faith was a mantle of both honor and burden, one that Srinidhi was determined to bear with dignity. As they stood at the edge of the forest, the towering trees casting dappled shadows on the ground, King Srihari's expression softened slightly. "May the gods watch over you. Srinidhi, go with the blessings of Boripura." With a final nod, Srinidhi turned towards the dense forest, the sacred map clutched firmly in his hand. Each step he took was a step into the unknown, the beginning of a journey that would shape not only his destiny, but that of the entire kingdom. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the lush forests of Boripura, Srinidhi Ranganathan found himself standing before the humble abode of his guru, Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar. The small, weather-worn cottage was nestled on the edge of the forest, surrounded by ancient trees, whose leaves whispered secrets carried by the evening breeze. Srinidhi took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the sacred map tucked securely inside his tunic. His heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. With determined steps, he approached the wooden door and knocked gently. The door creaked open, revealing the serene face of Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar. The sage's eyes, a deep, knowing brown, sparkled with wisdom. His long, silver hair and beard gave him an ethereal presence, as if he were a bridge between the mortal world and the divine. "Ah, Srinidhi," Mr. Mohan greeted, his voice calm and soothing. "I have been expecting you. Please, come in." Srinidhi stepped inside, the familiar scent of incense and herbs enveloping him. The interior of the cottage was modest, but filled with an array of mystical artifacts, ancient scrolls, and shelves stocked with vials of mysterious liquids. A single flickering candle cast dancing shadows on the walls, adding to the atmosphere of ancient wisdom. "Guruji," Srinidhi began, bowing respectfully, "I come seeking your guidance. King Srihari has entrusted me with a sacred map to the submerged city of Samudhram. I am to find the golden treasure that lies within." Mr. Mohan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yes, the king has made a wise choice in selecting you for this noble quest. But remember, Srinidhi, the path to the treasure is fraught with peril. It is not just your physical strength that will be tested, but your spirit and mind as well." Srinidhi listened intently, absorbing every word. "What must I do to prepare, Guruji?" The sage motioned for Srinidhi to sit on a woven mat beside him, First, you must clear your mind of doubt and fear. Meditation will help you achieve this. Close your eyes, Srinidhi, and focus on your breath. Let it guide you to a place of inner peace. Srinidhi closed his eyes and followed Mr. Mohan's instructions. The rhythmic rise and fall of his breath began to calm his racing thoughts. The sounds of the forest outside faded away, replaced by a deep sense of tranquility. Now, Mr. Mohan continued, visualize the journey ahead. See yourself overcoming the challenges, facing the dangers with courage and wisdom. You are not alone, Srinidhi. The spirits of our ancestors watch over you, and the strength of Boripura flows through your veins. As Srinidhi immersed himself in the visualization, images of dense forests, towering mountains, and the mystical city of Samudhram filled his mind. He saw himself standing tall against fearsome creatures and solving ancient riddles. With each breath, his confidence grew stronger. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Mohan's voice gently brought him back to the present. Open your eyes, Srinidhi. How do you feel? Srinidhi opened his eyes, feeling a newfound clarity and resolve. I feel ready, Guruji. Thank you for your guidance. The sage smiled warmly. Remember, Srinidhi, the true treasure lies not in gold, but in the wisdom and courage you gain along the way. Trust in yourself and the bonds you form with those who accompany you. Mr. Mohan reached into a small chest and retrieved a finely crafted amulet, its surface engraved with ancient symbols. Take this, Srinidhi. Srinidhi accepted the amulet with gratitude, fastening it around his neck. I will carry your teachings in my heart, Guruji. Thank you. As he stepped out of the cottage, the sky now painted with the deep hues of twilight, Srinidhi felt a profound sense of purpose. The journey ahead was daunting, but with the wisdom of his guru and the strength of his ancestors, he knew he could face whatever lay ahead. At dawn, the village of Boripura stirred with a sense of anticipation. The air was filled with the scent of morning dew and the faint, earthy aroma of the forest beyond. Srinidhi Ranganathan, dressed in his warrior attire, stood at the edge of the village square, his heart heavy yet resolute. His eyes scanned the familiar faces of the villagers who had gathered to bid him farewell. Elderly women with lined faces and kind eyes approached him, their hands raised in blessing. May the gods protect you, brave one of them whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Srinidhi bowed his head respectfully, feeling the weight of her hopes and prayers. Children, their eyes wide with admiration and curiosity, clustered around him, clutching small handmade tokens. A young boy, no older than 8, held out a crudely carved wooden figurine of a lion. For luck, he said shyly. Srinidhi accepted the gift with a warm smile, ruffling the boy's hair. Thank you, young warrior, he said, his voice gentle. I will carry this with me on my journey. As he moved through the crowd, other villagers stepped forward, offering words of encouragement and small tokens of their faith. A blacksmith handed him a freshly forged dagger, its blade gleaming in the early morning light. May this serve you well in times of need, he said, his voice gruff but brimming with pride. Srinidhi accepted it with a nod, feeling the cold, reassuring weight of the weapon in his hand. Amid the sea of faces, Srinidhi's gaze met that of a young mother who held a sleeping infant in her arms. Her eyes were filled with gratitude. You go with all our hopes, Srinidhi, she said softly. Return to us safely. He nodded, a lump forming in his throat, and promised himself that he would not let their faith go in vain. From the corner of his eye, Srinidhi noticed a group of young men, his childhood companions, standing a little apart from the crowd. Their expressions were a mix of envy and respect. One of them, a tall, muscular man named Kamal, stepped forward, clasping Srinidhi's hand in a firm grip. You've always been the bravest of us, Kamal said, his voice steady. Make us proud. I will, Srinidhi replied, gripping Kamal's hand firmly, and I will return with stories to tell. As the sun continued to rise, casting a golden hue over the village, Srinidhi felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar, his guru, standing beside him. The sage's eyes were serene, yet there was a depth of wisdom and unspoken concern in them. Remember, Srinidhi, Mr. Shankar began, his voice like a soothing balm. The journey ahead will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. Trust in yourself and in the teachings you have received. They will guide you when the path seems darkest. Srinidhi nodded, absorbing the weight of his guru's words. I will not forget, Guruji, he replied solemnly. With a final look at the gathered villagers, Srinidhi took a deep breath and began to walk towards the forest path that lay ahead. The villagers parted, creating a pathway for him. As he walked, the sounds of their blessings and well wishes followed him, a chorus of hope and faith that buoyed his spirits. The edge of the forest loomed closer, the trees standing tall and imposing, their leaves whispering secrets in the gentle breeze. Srinidhi paused for a moment, turning back to take one last look at his village. The sight of the familiar homes, the people who had shaped his life, filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. He raised his hand in a final farewell, a silent promise to return. With determined steps, Srinidhi entered the forest, the dense foliage swallowing him in its embrace. The journey had begun, and with each step he took, he carried the hopes and dreams of Boripura with him, a beacon of courage and resilience in a world filled with unknowns. The royal palace of Boripura stood tall against the backdrop of a vibrant morning sky, its spires catching the first rays of dawn. Inside the grand hall, adorned with tapestries depicting the kingdom's rich history, stood Srinidhi, his heart heavy with the weight of parting. Around him, friends and family gathered, their faces a mix of pride and sorrow. As he moved through the hall, Srinidhi's eyes caught sight of Arya and Tharun near the ornately carved columns. Arya, with her bow slung across her back and a quiver full of arrows, stood tall and resolute. Her sharp eyes, the color of stormy seas, softened momentarily as she met Srinidhi's gaze. Tharun, his childhood friend and steadfast companion, leaned casually against the column, his confident demeanor a familiar source of comfort. "Srinidhi," Arya called out, her voice steady but laced with determination. "We won't let you go on this journey alone. Tharun and I have decided to join you." Srinidhi paused, his brows furrowing slightly. "Arya, Tharun, this quest is fraught with danger. I can't ask you to risk your lives." Tharun pushed off the column and stepped forward, his hand resting reassuringly on Srinidhi's shoulder. "You didn't ask, my friend. We chose. We faced many challenges together, and this will be no different." Arya nodded, her expression unwavering. "We've trained for moments like this, Srinidhi. We are stronger together." Before Srinidhi could respond, the heavy door at the far end of the hall creaked open, and King Srihari entered, his regal presence commanding the room's attention. The king's eyes, wise and knowing, settled on the trio with a hint of a smile. "Ah, Arya and Tharun," King Srihari began, his voice warm and resonant. "I see you have chosen to accompany Srinidhi on this noble quest. Your loyalty and bravery do your families proud." He approached them, the golden map tucked under his arm, and placed a hand on Srinidhi's other shoulder. "Remember, this journey is not just about finding the treasure. It is about the courage, wisdom, and unity you display along the way. The people of Boripura look up to you, and they will find strength in your actions." Srinidhi bowed his head in respect. "We will bring honor to the kingdom, Your Majesty." King Srihari handed the map to Srinidhi, the parchment crackling softly as it exchanged hands. "May the gods guide your path and protect you. Return to us victorious." With a final bow, the king departed, leaving the trio to their preparations. Srinidhi turned to Arya and Tharun, his resolve renewed by their unwavering support. "Then we go together," he said, his voice firm. "Let us gather our equipment and bid farewell to our loved ones. We leave at first light." As they made their way out of the palace, the weight of their mission settled upon them, but so did the strength of their bond. Each step they took was filled with purpose, and the anticipation of the journey ahead mingled with the bittersweet moments of parting. The marketplace of Boripura buzzed with life, a vibrant tapestry of colors, sounds, and scents. Merchants called out their wares, their voices mingling with the chatter of townsfolk and the clinking of coins. Aromas of spices, fresh fruits, and baked goods wafted through the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the marketplace. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun moved purposefully through the bustling throng, their eyes scanning the stalls for the supplies they needed. Srinidhi's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his sword, a silent reminder of the journey ahead. Arya walked beside him, her keen eyes assessing the quality of the goods on display, while Tharun's broad shoulders cut an easy path through the crowd. "Over here," Arya called, her voice carrying above the din. She pointed to a stall laden with dried meats and preserved fruits. These will last us through the forest." The merchant, a portly man with a jovial face, greeted them with a wide smile. "Ah, travelers, you look like you're preparing for quite the journey. What can I get for you?" Srinidhi stepped forward, his demeanor respectful yet firm. "We need provisions that will keep for a long journey. Dried meats, fruits, and anything else that can withstand the elements." The merchant nodded, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Heading somewhere far, eh? Must be a grand adventure." Arya smiled but said nothing, her hands already examining the goods. Tharun, ever practical, added, "We'll also need some sturdy rope and additional water skins." As the merchant gathered their requests, Srinidhi's gaze wandered across the marketplace. He watched as a young boy chased after a runaway chicken, his laughter infectious. An elderly woman haggled vigorously with a spice seller, her gestures animated. These were his people, the heart of Boripura, and their simple lives were what he sought to protect. "Here you go, young warrior," the merchant said, handing over the packed provisions. "May the gods watch over your journey." Srinidhi inclined his head in thanks, passing the goods to Tharun. "We'll take these," he said, handing the merchant a small pouch of coins, "and may your business prosper." They continued through the marketplace, stopping next at a blacksmith stall. The blacksmith, a burly man with soot-streaked arms, looked up from his work, his face lighting up with recognition. "Srinidhi, it's been a while since I've seen you here. What brings you to my corner of the market?" "We're preparing for a long journey, Durga," Srinidhi replied. "We need to ensure our weapons are in top condition." Durga nodded, his eyes flicking to Arya's bow and Tharun's sword. "Hand them over, then. I'll make sure they're ready for whatever lies ahead." As Durga inspected their weapons, Arya leaned in close to Srinidhi. "It feels good to be doing this together," she said softly. "We've faced challenges before, but this feels different." Srinidhi met her gaze, his expression serious. "It is different, Arya. The stakes are higher, and the path is uncertain. But with you and Tharun by my side, I have faith we'll succeed." Tharun, overhearing their conversation, clapped Srinidhi on the back. "We've got your back, my friend, no matter what comes our way." Durga returned their weapons, now gleaming and sharp. "There you go. May they serve you well." He paused, his expression growing somber. "Be careful out there. The world beyond Boripura is full of dangers." "We will," Srinidhi assured him, gripping the blacksmith's forearm in a gesture of camaraderie. "Thank you, Durga." Their final stop was at a stall selling medicinal herbs and remedies. A wiry old woman with sharp eyes and nimble fingers presided over the stall, her movements precise as she sorted through her wares. "Herbs for wounds and fever," Arya requested. As they finished gathering their supplies, the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the bustling marketplace. The air was filled with the mingled scents of spices, freshly baked bread, and the earthy aroma of newly picked fruits. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun made their way to a quieter corner, away from the clamor of merchants and townsfolk. The secluded spot was shadowed by an ancient, gnarled tree, its branches spreading wide like a protective canopy. The trio paused to catch their breath, their faces flushed with excitement and anticipation for the journey ahead. Tharun adjusted his sword belt, while Arya checked her quiver, ensuring her arrows were secure. As they were about to move on, a soft, almost ethereal voice called out, "Young warriors, spare a moment for an old woman." Startled, they turned to see an elderly woman seated on a worn wooden bench. Her eyes were milky with age, but they seemed to hold a depth of knowledge and mystery. She was draped in a tattered shawl, her hands clasped around a staff that looked as ancient as she did. Srinidhi, ever respectful, stepped forward and bowed slightly. "How can we assist you, grandmother?" The old woman smiled, a touch of sadness in her expression. "It is not assistance I seek, but to offer you a blessing for your journey." Her gaze shifted from Srinidhi to Arya and Tharun, lingering on each of them as if she could see into their very souls. Arya, intrigued, stepped closer. "We would be honored to receive your blessing." The old woman extended a trembling hand, which Srinidhi took gently. Her touch was cool, and as her eyes bore into his, he felt a strange sensation, as if a veil of knowledge was being drawn aside. "Your path will be fraught with danger," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "But remember, the heart that remains true will always find its way." Tharun exchanged a puzzled glance with Arya. "What do you mean, grandmother?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity and concern. The old woman released Srinidhi's hand and leaned back, her eyes closing momentarily. "Not all that glitters is gold, and not all who seem friends are true. Trust wisely and listen to the whispers of your heart." Her words hung in the air, heavy and cryptic. Srinidhi felt a chill run down his spine, but he nodded respectfully. "We will heed your advice, grandmother." The old woman's eyes opened again, and she smiled, this time with a hint of warmth. "May the gods watch over you, brave ones." She raised her staff and traced an intricate pattern in the air, leaving a faint trail of shimmering light that quickly faded. As the trio turned to leave, Arya glanced back at the old woman, but she had already disappeared, as if she had never been there. The bench was empty, the only evidence of her presence, the lingering echo of her words in their minds. They resumed their walk through the marketplace, each lost in thought. The old woman's warning played over and over in Srinidhi's mind, adding a layer of gravity to their quest. He glanced at Arya and Tharun, both of whom seemed equally contemplative. "We must stay vigilant," Srinidhi said quietly, breaking the silence. Her words were not without reason. Arya nodded, her eyes scanning their surroundings as if expecting danger to appear at any moment. "Agreed. We'll need to be careful about who we trust." Tharun placed a reassuring hand on Srinidhi's shoulder. "We'll face whatever comes our way together. We have each other's backs." Srinidhi smiled, grateful for his friend's unwavering support. "Together," he echoed, feeling a renewed sense of determination. As they left the marketplace behind, the shadows lengthened and the first stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, guiding them toward the unknown challenges that awaited. The dense forests of Boripura loomed like an impenetrable wall before them, a wilderness of ancient trees and tangled undergrowth. The sunlight filtered through the canopy in dappled beams, casting a mystical glow on the forest floor. As they approached the edge of the forest, Srinidhi glanced at his companions, Arya and Tharun. Their faces were set with determination, yet a hint of anticipation flickered in their eyes. The trio paused for a moment, taking in the vast expanse of greenery that lay ahead. The air was filled with the earthy scent of moss and the distant calls of unseen birds. Arya adjusted her quiver, ensuring her arrows were within easy reach, while Tharun tightened the grip on his sword, its blade gleaming in the filtered light. "Are we ready?" Srinidhi's voice broke the silence, steady and resolute. Arya nodded, her eyes sharp and focused. "Ready as we'll ever be. The forest won't wait for us." Tharun gave a wry smile. "Let's just hope it's as welcoming as you make it sound." With a final glance at each other, they stepped into the forest, the sounds of the marketplace fading behind them. The path they chose was narrow and winding, bordered by ferns and thick underbrush. Each step seemed to draw them deeper into an otherworldly realm where the rules of civilization held little sway. The forest was alive with movement. Small creatures darted through the foliage, their rustling adding an undercurrent of activity to the otherwise serene environment. The trio moved cautiously, their senses heightened, every sound and shadow a potential threat. The deeper they ventured, the more the forest seemed to close in around them, the trees standing like silent sentinels. As they trekked further, the path became more rugged. Gnarled roots jutted out from the ground, and the undergrowth thickened, forcing them to slow their pace. Srinidhi led the way, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. His mind was a whirl of thoughts, the weight of the quest pressing heavily upon him, yet he could not afford to show uncertainty. His companions looked to him for guidance and strength. "Hold on," Arya whispered suddenly, her hand raised in a gesture for them to stop. The trio froze, their breaths held as Arya's keen eyes swept the area. "What is it?" Tharun asked, his voice barely more than a murmur. Arya pointed to a barely discernible trail of broken twigs and disturbed leaves. "Something's been through here recently. Could be wildlife, but we need to stay alert." They resumed their journey, now more vigilant than ever. The forest seemed to sense their intrusion, its ambiance shifting subtly. The rustling of leaves overhead grew louder, and the distant calls of birds became more sporadic, as if the very environment was warning them. As they moved forward, Srinidhi's thoughts drifted to his guru, Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar. The sage's words echoed in his mind, a reminder of the wisdom and strength he needed to draw upon. The forest will test you, his guru had said. Not just your strength, but your spirit. Remember, true courage lies in facing the unknown with an open heart. Suddenly, a loud snap resounded through the forest, startling them. Arya had her bow drawn in an instant, an arrow nocked and ready. Tharun's sword was out, his stance defensive. Srinidhi tightened his grip on his spear, his heart pounding in his chest. From the shadows emerged a wild boar, its eyes wide with fear. It barreled past them, disappearing into the thicket. The tension eased, and they shared a breathless laugh, the release of adrenaline leaving them momentarily lightheaded. "Looks like we're not the only ones on edge," Tharun quipped, sheathing his sword. Arya lowered her bow, but kept it ready. "Let's keep moving. We have a long way to go." The path ahead grew darker as the canopy thickened, the light barely piercing through. The forest seemed to enfold them in its ancient embrace, each step taking them further from the world they knew. Srinidhi led the way, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a mix of vigilance and awe. Arya followed closely, her bow at the ready, while Tharun brought up the rear, his sword unsheathed and his steps purposeful. The dense canopy of the forest loomed overhead, casting dappled shadows on the narrow path that wound through the heart of Boripura's wilderness. The air was thick with the scent of earth and moss, and the sounds of unseen creatures rustled in the underbrush. The path was uneven, roots and rocks jutting out to trip the unwary traveler. The trio moved with caution, their senses attuned to every noise and movement around them. "Stay close," Srinidhi whispered, his voice barely audible over the chorus of cicadas. "This forest is known for its wild beasts. We must be prepared for anything." Arya nodded, her eyes sharp and focused. "I've heard tales of giant wolves and serpents that can swallow a man whole. We must be vigilant." Tharun grinned, though his grip on his sword tightened. "A few wild beasts are no match for us. We've faced worse in training." Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down their spines. The sound was guttural and menacing, coming from somewhere just out of sight. Srinidhi raised his hand, signaling them to halt. "Did you hear that?" Arya whispered, her eyes darting around. "Yes," Srinidhi replied, his voice steady. "Stay alert." The growl grew louder, and from the shadows emerged a pair of gleaming yellow eyes. A massive wild boar, its tusks sharp and menacing, stepped into the path. Its fur bristled, and it snorted aggressively, pawing at the ground. "We need to drive it away," Srinidhi said, his voice calm but firm. "Arya, can you take it down from a distance?" Arya nodded, drawing an arrow from her quiver. She took a deep breath, aimed, and released. The arrow flew straight and true, striking the boar in the shoulder. The beast roared in pain, but did not retreat. Instead, it charged at them with surprising speed. Tharun stepped forward, his sword raised. "I'll distract it. Arya, get ready to shoot again." With a battle cry, Tharun moved to intercept the boar, his sword slicing through the air. He dodged its tusks with agility, landing a blow on its side. The boar roared again, this time in fury, and turned its attention to Tharun. Arya took the opportunity to knock another arrow. Her hands were steady as she aimed and fired, hitting the boar in the neck. The beast staggered, blood oozing from its wounds, but still it fought on. "One more," Srinidhi shouted, joining the fray. His sword gleamed as he struck the boar from the other side, aiming for a fatal blow. The boar let out a final, agonized squeal before collapsing to the ground, defeated. Breathing heavily, Tharun wiped the sweat from his brow. As they continued along the narrow path, the forest seemed to close in around them, the shadows growing longer and the air cooler. The encounter with the wild boar had been a stark reminder of the perils that lay ahead, but it had also solidified their bond as a team. Srinidhi led the way, his keen eyes scanning for any signs of danger. Arya walked beside him, her bow at the ready, while Tharun brought up the rear, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. They moved in silence, each footfall carefully placed to minimize noise. Suddenly, Srinidhi halted, raising a hand to signal the others. His eyes were fixed on a peculiar sight, a faint, ethereal glow emanating from a cluster of plants just off the narrow path. The plants seemed to pulse with an inner light, casting an otherworldly luminescence that drew them closer. "What do you think it is?" Arya whispered, her voice tinged with curiosity. Srinidhi crouched down, studying the glowing plants. I've never seen anything like this before. It's almost as if they're guiding us. Tharun knelt beside him, reaching out to touch one of the plants. As his fingers brushed against its delicate leaves, the glow intensified, revealing a hidden trail that seemed to lead deeper into the forest. Perhaps they are guiding us, Tharun suggested, his voice filled with wonder. Should we follow? Srinidhi nodded, rising to his feet. We have come this far by trusting our instincts. Let's see where this path leads. The trio followed the glowing trail, their surroundings growing increasingly mystical with each step. The air felt cooler, and the sound of rushing water soon reached their ears. The trail led them to a secluded clearing where a magnificent waterfall cascaded down from a high cliff, its waters sparkling like diamonds in the sunlight. This is incredible, Arya breathed, her eyes wide with amazement. It's like something out of a dream. Srinidhi approached the edge of the pool formed by the waterfall, kneeling to scoop up some water. It was refreshingly cool, and as he drank, he felt a surge of vitality course through him. This place is special, he said, his voice filled with reverence. I can feel it. There's a sense of peace here, as if the very air is imbued with magic. Arya and Tharun joined him, drinking from the pool and feeling the same rejuvenating effect. They took a moment to rest, their spirits lifted by the serene beauty of their surroundings. As they sat by the pool, Arya glanced at Srinidhi, a thoughtful expression on her face. You know, I've always admired your determination. You never waver, no matter how tough things get. Srinidhi looked at her, his eyes reflecting the sincerity of her words. I couldn't do this alone. Your skills and Tharun's strength have been invaluable. We're a team, and together, we're stronger. Tharun smiled, clapping Srinidhi on the shoulder. And we wouldn't have it any other way. We've faced dangers before, and we'll face many more. But as long as we stick together, there's nothing we can't overcome. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden ripple in the pool. The glowing plants around the waterfall began to pulse more brightly, casting intricate patterns of light on the water's surface. A sense of anticipation hung in the air, as if the forest itself was alive and watching. Srinidhi stood, his gaze fixed on the waterfall. There's something more here. We've been led to this place for a reason. Arya and Tharun followed his gaze, their expressions mirroring his determination. They knew that their journey was far from over, and that the challenges ahead would test their limits. But in that moment, surrounded by the mystical beauty of the hidden waterfall, they felt a renewed sense of purpose and unity. With a final shared glance of resolve, the trio gathered their belongings and prepared to continue their journey. The glowing plants dimmed as they moved away, as if bidding them farewell and wishing them luck on the path ahead. As they ventured deeper into the forest, guided by the newfound sense of direction and the bond they shared, they knew that whatever awaited them, they would face it together. The hidden waterfall had given them more than just a moment of respite. It had strengthened their resolve and their belief in the power of unity and trust. The trio continued their journey, the forest gradually thinning until they emerged into a serene clearing bathed in the soft glow of the afternoon sun. The air was fragrant with the scent of blooming wildflowers, and the sound of a gentle stream nearby added a calming rhythm to the otherwise silent surroundings. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun paused to take in the tranquil beauty of the place, their weariness momentarily lifted. As they moved further into the clearing, a figure stepped out from behind a cluster of trees. She was a strikingly beautiful woman, her long, flowing hair shimmering like threads of gold in the sunlight. Draped in a simple, yet elegant gown, she seemed almost ethereal, her presence both soothing and mesmerizing. "Welcome, travelers," she said, her voice melodious and warm. "You must be weary from your journey. Please, rest here. I have food and shelter to offer." Srinidhi exchanged a cautious glance with Arya and Tharun. The forest had proven to be treacherous, and trust was not something they could afford easily. Yet there was something undeniably inviting about the woman, and the promise of rest was tempting. "Thank you for your kindness," Srinidhi replied, his voice measured. "But we must be cautious. These lands are dangerous, and we cannot be too careful." The woman smiled, a gesture that seemed to illuminate the clearing even more. "I understand your hesitation. My name is Nuthari. I live here. away from the perils of the outside world. You have nothing to fear from me." Arya, ever the vigilant archer, kept her bow within easy reach, her eyes never leaving Nuthari. Tharun, on the other hand, seemed slightly more at ease, his weariness evident after their long trek. "Rest would do us good," Tharun admitted, his voice betraying his exhaustion. "But we must remain vigilant." Nuhari gestured to a small, well-tended garden where fruits and flowers grew in abundance. "Please, help yourselves. I assure you, everything here is safe." Srinidhi, still wary, nodded. "We appreciate your hospitality. We will rest, but we will also keep our guard up." As they settled down, Nuthari brought out a woven basket filled with ripe fruits and fresh bread. The trio ate cautiously, their eyes continually scanning the surroundings. Nuthari engaged them in light conversation, her demeanor warm and inviting. "So, what brings such brave souls into the heart of this forest?" she asked, her tone genuinely curious. Srinidhi hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "We are on a quest, one that requires us to traverse these lands. Our mission is of great importance to our kingdom." Nuthari nodded, her eyes shimmering with interest. "Such dedication and bravery. The kingdom is fortunate to have you. But tell me, do you not fear the dangers that lie ahead?" "Dangers are part of any great journey," Arya interjected, her voice steady. "We face them together, and we trust in our skills and each other." Tharun, taking a bite of the sweet fruit, added, "And we have faced many trials already. We will continue, no matter what comes our way." Nuthari's gaze lingered on each of them, her smile unwavering. "I admire your resolve. If there is anything more I can do to assist you, please do not hesitate to ask." The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the clearing. Srinidhi felt a strange mix of relaxation and unease. Nuthari's hospitality was genuine, yet something about her seemed almost too perfect, too convenient. "We appreciate your kindness," Srinidhi said, standing up. "But we must be on our way soon. Nightfall is approaching, and we have far to go." Nuthari rose as well, her movements graceful and fluid. "Of course, but please rest a little longer. The night can be unforgiving, and you are safe here with me." Srinidhi glanced at Arya and Tharun, noting their mixed feelings of gratitude and suspicion. "We will stay a bit longer," he decided, "but we must remain vigilant." The trio settled back down, their senses on high alert despite the serene setting. As the light continued to fade, the clearing took on an almost magical quality, the flowers and leaves glowing softly in the twilight. The flickering light of the campfire cast long shadows across the clearing, the crackling flames providing a comforting warmth against the chill of the night. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun sat around the fire, their weary bodies grateful for the respite. Nuthari, the seemingly beautiful woman who had offered them food and shelter, moved gracefully, her movements fluid and enchanting. Srinidhi's eyes narrowed as he watched her. There was something about her that unsettled him, a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach that refused to be ignored. He glanced at Arya, who was meticulously inspecting her bowstring, her keen eyes occasionally darting towards Nuthari with suspicion. Tharun, on the other hand, seemed more relaxed, engrossed in sharpening his sword, the rhythmic scraping sound blending with the crackle of the fire. Nuthari approached with a tray of food, her smile radiant and inviting. "Please, eat. You must be famished from your journey," she said, her voice melodious and soothing. She placed the tray in the center, and Srinidhi noticed her fingers brush against his arm, sending a shiver down his spine. "Thank you," Srinidhi replied, his voice cautious. He took a piece of the bread, tearing off a small chunk and passing the rest to Arya. She accepted it but did not eat, her eyes fixed on Nuthari, who had now settled on a log opposite them. "Your kindness is appreciated," Arya said, her tone polite but distant. "But tell us, what brings you to such a remote part of the forest?" Nuthari's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, barely noticeable, but Srinidhi caught it. "I have always been a wanderer, seeking solace in nature's embrace. This forest is my sanctuary," she replied smoothly. Tharun, oblivious to the tension, took a hearty bite of the bread. "It's rare to find such hospitality in these parts. We are fortunate to have crossed paths with you." Srinidhi felt a sudden urge to probe further. "You speak as if you know these woods well. Have you encountered any dangers here?" he asked, his eyes boring into hers. Nuthari's gaze flickered momentarily, a shadow passing over her features. The forest has its secrets, but I have learned to navigate them. Arya leaned forward, her voice low and probing. Secrets can be dangerous. We've faced many perils on our journey. It's wise to be cautious. The tension in the air was palpable, the crackling of the fire, the only sound breaking the silence. Srinidhi's instincts screamed at him, urging him to trust his gut. He reached for his sword, the movement slow and deliberate, his eyes never leaving Nuthari. Perhaps you should tell us more about these secrets, Srinidhi said, his voice firm. Nuthari's smile turned cold, her eyes glinting with a sinister light. Curiosity can be a deadly trait, warrior, she hissed, her voice losing its melodious charm. In an instant, her form shimmered and twisted, revealing her true nature. The beautiful woman vanished, replaced by a grotesque sorceress, her eyes burning with malevolent fire. Arya leapt to her feet, bow at the ready, an arrow knocked and drawn in a heartbeat. Tharun, taken aback, scrambled to his feet, sword in hand. "What treachery is this?" he exclaimed, his voice a mix of shock and anger. Nuthari's laughter echoed through the clearing, a chilling sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Fools, you think you can defeat me? I am Nuthari, mistress of dark magic. Your journey ends here." Srinidhi stepped forward, sword raised, his eyes locked on the sorceress. "We will not be so easily deceived. Your tricks end now." With a snarl, Nuthari raised her hands, dark energy crackling around her fingertips. The ground beneath them trembled, roots and vines erupting from the earth, snaking towards the trio with terrifying speed. Arya released her arrow, the projectile whistling through the air and striking Nuthari's shoulder. The sorceress screamed, the dark energy faltering for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, Tharun slashed at the vines, cutting them down before they could ensnare them. Srinidhi charged forward, his sword gleaming in the firelight. He swung with precision, aiming for Nuthari's heart. Nuthari's eyes widened in surprise and fury. She raised a hand to deflect the blow, but Srinidhi's strike was swift and true. The blade pierced her chest, and she let out a guttural scream, her form convulsing as dark energy exploded around her. With a final shuddering breath, Nuthari fell to the ground, her body dissipating into a cloud of dark mist. The clearing fell silent, the only sound the heavy breathing of the three warriors. Srinidhi lowered his sword, his eyes scanning the clearing for any remaining threats. Arya and Tharun moved to his side, their faces grim but resolute. "Deception may be powerful," Srinidhi said, his voice steady, "but truth and courage will always prevail." Arya nodded, her eyes still wary. "We must remain vigilant. There are more dangers ahead, and we cannot afford to be caught off guard again." Tharun sheathed his sword, his expression one of determination. "Together, we will face whatever comes our way." Srinidhi's eyes narrowed as he watched Nuthari's true form emerge from the beautiful facade she had worn. Her laugh, once melodic, now echoed with a sinister timbre through the clearing. Arya and Tharun, weapons drawn, flanked him, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and wariness. The air grew dense with tension, the soft rustle of leaves now a distant memory against the palpable threat that Nuthari posed. Srinidhi stepped forward, his grip tightening on his sword. "Your deceit ends here, sorceress," he declared, his voice steady. "We will not be swayed from our path." Nuthari's laugh turned into a snarl as she raised her hands, conjuring dark tendrils of magic that snaked through the air towards them. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun moved in unison, their training and bond evident in their seamless coordination. Arya's arrows flew with precision, aimed at the dark tendrils, each one dissipating a tendril upon impact. Tharun charged forward, his sword a blur as he deflected the magical attacks aimed at them. Srinidhi, focusing on the sorceress, advanced with calculated steps. He could feel the weight of the sacred map tucked securely in his belt, a reminder of the mission entrusted to him. He recalled Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar's teachings, the sage's calm voice guiding him to see beyond the immediate danger, to find the sorceress's weakness. As Nuthari's dark magic swirled around them, Srinidhi's mind raced. He observed her movements, noting the moments when her concentration wavered. "There!" A flicker of uncertainty in her eyes whenever Arya's arrows struck true. Srinidhi's strategy formed in an instant. "Arya, keep the pressure on her," he commanded. "Tharun, with me." Arya nodded, her focus unbroken as she continued to fire arrow after arrow, each one more precise than the last. Tharun and Srinidhi moved together, their swords a synchronized dance of steel and strength. As they closed the distance, Nuthari's frustration became evident. Her attacks grew more erratic, her control slipping. Srinidhi seized the moment. He feigned a strike to her left, drawing her attention, while Tharun lunged from the right, his blade slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. Nuthari screamed, a sound that reverberated through the clearing as Tharun's sword found its mark, severing the dark tendrils that fueled her magic. With a final, desperate shriek, Nuthari's form began to disintegrate, the dark energy that sustained her unraveling. Srinidhi stepped back, his breath heavy, watching as the sorceress's malevolent essence dissipated into the air. The clearing grew quiet, the tension lifting as if the forest itself breathed a sigh of relief. Srinidhi turned to his companions, his face etched with exhaustion but also a newfound resolve. Arya lowered her bow, her eyes meeting his with a silent acknowledgement of their victory. Tharun, ever loyal, sheathed his sword and clapped Srinidhi on the shoulder, a proud grin spreading across his face. "We did it," Tharun said, his voice filled with relief. Srinidhi nodded, his gaze shifting to the path ahead. "This is just the beginning. We must stay vigilant. The challenges will only grow more formidable from here." Arya stepped beside him, her eyes reflecting the same resolve. "But together, we can face them. We've proven that today." With a final glance at the now peaceful clearing, the trio resumed their journey, the weight of their mission pressing, but their spirits unbroken. The road to Samudhram lay ahead, fraught with unknown dangers, but they moved forward with a shared determination, each step a testament to their strength and unity. Emerging from the forest's last vestiges, Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun stood at the edge of a vast expanse of water. Before them, the entrance to the submerged city of Samudhram lay hidden beneath the rippling surface, only discernible by the faint shimmer of ancient runes carved into submerged stone pillars. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and moss, mingled with the crisp tang of the lake. A sense of foreboding hung heavy, as though the water itself was whispering secrets of old. Srinidhi tightened his grip on the sacred map, feeling the weight of King Srihari's trust resting upon his shoulders. His eyes scanned the surroundings, noting the eerie stillness that seemed to envelop the area. Beside him, Arya's bow was already in her hand, her keen eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Tharun, ever the swordsman, had his blade drawn, ready for any threat that might emerge. As they approached the water's edge, the surface began to churn, sending ripples cascading outwards. The trio halted, senses on high alert. From the depths, a massive form began to rise, displacing the water with a roar that echoed through the nearby hills. Emerging fully from the lake, the three-headed lion stood before them, each head snarling and baring teeth as sharp as daggers. Its fur was matted and slick with water, eyes glowing with an unearthly light. The lion's central head let out a deafening roar, causing the ground beneath their feet to tremble. Srinidhi stepped forward, his heart pounding but his resolve unshaken. "We have come seeking entrance to Samudhram," he declared, his voice steady despite the beast's intimidating presence. The lion's left head snapped its jaws, while the right head growled menacingly. The central head spoke, its voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the air. "Only those worthy may pass. Prove your strength or perish." Arya took a step closer to Srinidhi, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment. "We can do this," she murmured, her voice filled with determination. Tharun, ever the strategist, surveyed the beast, noting its movements and potential weaknesses. "We need to strike in unison," he suggested, his voice low but firm. "Distract it, find an opening, and strike." Srinidhi nodded, his mind racing as he formulated a plan. "Arya, aim for its eyes. Tharun, keep its heads occupied. I'll go for the legs." With a swift, fluid motion, Arya knocked an arrow and drew her bowstring, her eyes narrowing as she took aim. Tharun positioned himself to the lion's left, ready to draw its attention. Srinidhi, gripping his sword tightly, prepared to charge. The battle began in a flurry of movement. Arya loosed her arrow, striking the central head just above the eye, causing it to roar in pain and fury. Tharun darted in, slashing at the lion's left head, his blade glinting in the dim light. Srinidhi rushed forward, aiming for the beast's powerful legs. The lion retaliated with swift, brutal force. Its central head snapped at Arya, who deftly dodged and released another arrow. The right head lunged at Tharun, who parried with his sword, sparks flying as steel met claw. The beast's massive paw swiped at Srinidhi, who narrowly avoided the blow and struck at its leg, his sword biting deep into muscle and sinew. The trio fought with a synchronized rhythm, each movement calculated and precise. Arya's arrows flew true, each shot weakening the lion's defenses. Tharun's swordsmanship kept the beast's heads occupied, preventing it from focusing on any one target. Srinidhi's strikes were powerful and relentless, his determination unwavering. Despite their efforts, the lion's strength seemed inexhaustible, its roars echoing through the clearing. Srinidhi, panting but resolute, knew they had to find a way to end the battle swiftly. Arya, Tharun, we need to finish this. Together. Gathering their remaining strength, the trio launched a final coordinated assault. Arya aimed for the central head's eye once more, her arrow finding its mark with deadly precision. Tharun struck at the right head, his blade slicing through flesh and bone. Srinidhi channeled all his power into a single devastating blow to the lion's leg, causing the beast to collapse with a thunderous crash. The three-headed lion lay defeated, its roars reduced to pained whimpers. The path to Samudhram lay open before them, the entrance now unobstructed. Srinidhi sheathed his sword, his eyes meeting Arya's and Tharun's, a silent acknowledgement of their victory and the challenges yet to come. As they stood at the water's edge, the ancient runes began to glow brighter, illuminating the way forward. The submerged city awaited, its secrets and dangers still unknown. With renewed determination, they prepared to descend into the depths, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The entrance to the submerged city of Samudhram loomed before them, a dark, yawning maw framed by ancient stone pillars. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and the distant crash of waves, a constant reminder of the water that concealed the city. The three-headed lion, a colossal beast with each head snarling in a different direction, stood as an imposing sentinel. Srinidhi's heart pounded in his chest as he took a defensive stance, his grip tightening on his sword. "Stay close and be ready," he whispered to Arya and Tharun, his voice steady despite the tension. Arya nodded, her fingers deftly nocking an arrow, her eyes narrowing as she studied the beast's movements. Tharun, his broad shoulders set and his sword raised, positioned himself on the opposite side of Srinidhi, ready to strike. With a thunderous roar, the lion lunged, all three heads snapping in unison. Srinidhi dove to the side, rolling to his feet with practiced agility. Arya released her arrow, the twang of the bowstring sharp in the charged air. The arrow flew true, striking the middle head's eye, but the beast barely flinched, its fury only intensifying. Tharun charged forward, his blade flashing in the dim light as he aimed for the beast's legs. The lion leaped, its massive paws crashing down where Tharun had stood moments before. Tharun rolled to safety, his eyes meeting Srinidhi's in a silent exchange of determination. Srinidhi darted forward, slashing at one of the lion's heads. The creature roared in pain, blood spurting from the wound, but it swung its other two heads at him, forcing him to retreat. Arya loosed another arrow, this time aiming for the creature's chest, but the arrow merely glanced off its thick hide. "We need to outmaneuver it," Srinidhi shouted, trying to find a weak spot in the lion's defenses. He could feel the weight of the battle pressing down on his shoulders, each swing of his sword a test of his endurance. Arya circled around, her eyes locked on the beast, searching for an opening. "Its underbelly," she called out, her voice cutting through the din of the fight. "Aim for its underbelly." Tharun nodded, his jaw set in determination. "I'll distract it. Srinidhi, you go for the kill." Srinidhi hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "Be careful," he urged, his voice low but firm. Tharun charged again, this time feinting to one side before slashing at the lion's legs. The beast roared in frustration, its head snapping at Tharun, who danced just out of reach. Srinidhi seized the opportunity, sprinting towards the lion's exposed underbelly. With a powerful leap, he thrust his sword upwards, driving the blade deep into the creature's vulnerable flesh. The lion let out a bone-chilling scream, its head thrashing wildly as it tried to dislodge the blade. Arya fired one more arrow, this one piercing the heart of the middle head, and with a final shuddering roar, the beast collapsed. Srinidhi sheathed his sword, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The path to Samudhram was now open, and with his loyal companions by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The three-headed lion roared, its cries reverberating through the stone walls of the entrance to Samudram. The beast's three sets of eyes glowed with a sinister light, each head snapping and snarling at Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun. The air crackled with tension, an electric charge that seemed to magnify every sound. The swish of Arya's arrows, the clang of swords, the heavy breaths of the combatants. Srinidhi wiped a streak of blood from his forehead, his eyes never leaving the lion. "We need to coordinate our attacks," he shouted over the din, his voice firm and commanding. "Arya, focus on the left head. Tharun, take the right. I'll handle the center." Arya nodded, her fingers already knocking another arrow. She took a deep breath, narrowing her focus. With a swift release, her arrow flew true, striking the left head in its eye. The lion howled in pain, momentarily distracted. Tharun seized the opportunity, charging at the right head with his sword raised high. His blade cut through the air with a whistling sound, landing a deep gash across the lion's cheek. The beast's right head roared in fury, snapping its jaws at Tharun, who barely managed to dodge the deadly teeth. Srinidhi, meanwhile, faced the center head. He could see the intelligence in its eyes, a cunning that spoke of countless battles fought and won. The lion lunged at him, and he brought up his shield just in time, feeling the tremendous impact reverberate through his arm. He gritted his teeth, pushing back with all his might. "Now!" he yelled, signaling Arya and Tharun. They responded in unison, unleashing a flurry of attacks that forced the lion to retreat a step. Srinidhi saw his opening. With a swift and powerful thrust, he plunged his sword into the center head's throat. The beast's eyes widened in shock, its roar turning into a gurgle as it fell to the ground, lifeless. The other two heads, weakened and disoriented, were quickly dispatched by Arya's arrows and Tharun's relentless strikes. The lion's massive body collapsed, a final, shuddering breath escaping its lungs before it lay still. The trio stood panting, their bodies aching with the exertion of the battle. Arya lowered her bow, her hands trembling slightly. "We did it," she said, her voice a mixture of relief and disbelief. Tharun wiped his sword clean on the grass, his eyes still fixed on the fallen guardian. "I didn't think we would make it," he admitted, his voice softer than usual. "But we did, thanks to you, Srinidhi." Srinidhi sheathed his sword, looking at his friends with a mixture of pride and gratitude. "It was a team effort," he said, placing a hand on Tharun's shoulder. "We wouldn't have made it without Arya's precision and your strength." They turned to face the entrance to Samudram, now unguarded and inviting. The water shimmered with an otherworldly glow, casting an ethereal light on the ancient stone arches. The way ahead was clear, but the journey was far from over. "Let's move," Srinidhi said, his voice carrying a renewed determination. "The treasure awaits." Arya and Tharun nodded, their confidence bolstered by their victory. Together, they stepped through the entrance, ready to face whatever lay within the submerged city of Samudram. As the trio stepped through the breached gateway into the submerged city of Samudram, the landscape around them transformed into a realm of ethereal beauty and eerie silence. The water was clear, shimmering with an unnatural light that illuminated the ancient ruins sprawled across the city floor. Structures that once stood tall now lay in graceful disarray, their surfaces encrusted with corals and strange, bioluminescent flora that cast a soft, otherworldly glow. Srinidhi led the way, his eyes wide with awe and curiosity. "I've never seen anything like this," he whispered, his voice carrying a reverence that matched the majesty of their surroundings. Arya and Tharun flanked him, equally mesmerized by the sight. Arya paused by a crumbled archway, running her fingers over the intricate carvings. "These symbols, they're unlike anything we have in Boripura," she noted, her voice tinged with wonder. "It's like a different world down here." Tharun nodded, his gaze fixed on a distant column that seemed to pulsate with a gentle, rhythmic light. "It feels alive," he said, his voice barely above a murmur, "as if the city itself is breathing." They moved deeper into the city, each step revealing more of Samudram's hidden splendors. Schools of radiant fish darted through the water, their scales reflecting the ambient light in a dazzling display of colors. The trio navigated through narrow alleyways and open courtyards, the silence only broken by the occasional bubbling of water or the distant hum of unseen creatures. As they ventured further, Srinidhi's mind wandered to the teachings of his guru, Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar. He could almost hear the sage's voice, reminding him to remain vigilant and open to the wisdom that Samudram had to offer. The city was not just a place of hidden treasure, but a repository of ancient knowledge and forgotten history. Arya stopped suddenly, her keen eyes spotting something amidst the ruins. "Look there," she pointed, "a mural." They approached the wall, where an intricate mosaic depicted scenes of a once thriving civilization. People danced and celebrated, their faces captured in moments of joy and triumph. But as the mural progressed, it shifted to images of turmoil and chaos, with waves crashing over the city, engulfing it in water. "It tells the story of Samudram," Arya said softly, tracing the lines with her fingertips, "from its golden age to its fall." Srinidhi's heart ached at the sight. "We must honor their memory by succeeding in our quest," he said with quiet determination. "Their legacy should not be forgotten." As they continued, Tharun's thoughts turned inward. He had always stood by Srinidhi's side, but this journey was testing him in ways he had never imagined. Each challenge they faced, each creature they battled, was a reminder of his own strengths and weaknesses. He glanced at his friend, who moved with a sense of purpose and unwavering resolve. Tharun vowed to match that determination, to prove himself worthy of the quest and the friendship they shared. The trio's journey through the submerged city was a blend of exploration and introspection. They marveled at the ancient architecture, the statues and temples that spoke of a civilization steeped in mystery and grandeur. Yet, each step also brought them closer to the heart of Samudram, where the golden treasure awaited, a treasure that promised to change the fate of their kingdom. They reached a grand plaza, dominated by a towering statue of a warrior, his arms raised triumphantly, as if in defiance of the waters that had claimed the city. At the base of the statue, an inscription in an ancient script caught Srinidhi's eye. He knelt to examine it, the words resonating with a timeless wisdom. Arya and Tharun exchanged glances, their resolve solidifying. This was more than a quest for treasure. It was a journey of growth, of understanding, and of honoring the past. The trio ventured deeper into the submerged city of Samudram, their eyes wide with wonder as they marveled at the ancient ruins and glowing aquatic life. The ethereal beauty of the underwater world was mesmerizing, with bioluminescent plants casting an eerie yet enchanting glow on the weathered stone structures. Schools of fish, vibrant and colorful, darted around them, their silvery scales reflecting the ambient light. Arya's voice broke the silence, her tone filled with awe. "I never imagined such a place could exist. It's otherworldly." Srinidhi nodded, his gaze fixed on a crumbling statue of a once great warrior. "It's like stepping into a forgotten legend." But we must remain vigilant. Beauty often hides danger." Tharun, ever the pragmatist, tightened his grip on his sword. "We should keep moving. The treasure won't find itself." They pressed on, the water growing darker and the ruins more imposing. The once clear waters began to murk, and a sense of foreboding settled over the group. Just as they reached a particularly dense cluster of ruins, the water around them seemed to ripple with an unnatural force. Suddenly, a strange, otherworldly creature emerged from the shadows. The alien fish, with its elongated body and translucent fins, glided towards them with an almost hypnotic grace. Its eyes, large and luminescent, held a mysterious power that seemed to pierce through their very souls. Srinidhi instinctively raised his sword, but before he could strike, the alien fish emitted a low, resonant hum. The sound reverberated through the water, distorting their vision and making their heads throb with disorienting pressure. Arya clutched her temples, trying to maintain her focus, while Tharun staggered, momentarily losing his balance. "We need to think," Srinidhi shouted, his voice muffled by the water. "Attacking it head-on won't work. It's using some kind of psychic power." Arya, despite the pain, managed to knock an arrow and aimed it at the creature. "Maybe if we can distract it, weaken its hold on us." Tharun, regaining his composure, nodded. "I'll try to flank it. You focus on finding a weak spot." As Tharun moved to circle the alien fish, Arya loosed her arrow. It sliced through the water, striking the creature's side. The alien fish recoiled, its hum faltering for a brief moment. Srinidhi seized the opportunity, charging forward with a powerful stroke of his sword. The blade connected with a glancing blow, causing the creature to emit a high-pitched screech that sent shivers down their spines. The alien fish, now visibly agitated, lashed out with its tail, creating turbulent currents that pushed the trio back. Srinidhi was thrown against a ruined pillar, the impact knocking the breath out of him. Arya and Tharun struggled to maintain their footing, the water swirling chaotically around them. Srinidhi, his vision blurred, saw a faint glow emanating from the creature's chest. An idea sparked in his mind. The glow, its power source might be there. Arya, catching his words, aimed another arrow, this time targeting the glowing spot. The arrow flew true, embedding itself into the creature's chest. The alien fish convulsed, its hum turning into a garbled wail. Tharun, with a final burst of strength, lunged forward and drove his sword into the same spot. The creature's glow flickered and then dimmed, its body going limp. The water around them began to calm, and the oppressive pressure lifted. The trio, panting and bruised, exchanged relieved glances. "We did it," Arya said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and triumph. Srinidhi nodded, his eyes still on the fallen creature. "But we must stay alert. There are more challenges ahead." Tharun sheathed his sword, his expression resolute. "And we'll face them together." They continued their journey, deeper into the heart of Samudhram, their bond strengthened by the trials they had overcome. The depths of Samudhram shimmered with an ethereal glow, casting ghostly reflections on the submerged ruins. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun swam cautiously, their movements slow and deliberate. The alien fish circled them, its multiple eyes glinting with an otherworldly intelligence. Its scales radiated a spectrum of colors, and every flick of its fins sent ripples of light across the murky water. Srinidhi tightened his grip on his sword, though its weight was cumbersome underwater. Arya reached for an arrow, her bow strung taut, while Tharun positioned himself protectively in front of her. The alien fish darted closer, its eyes narrowing as it assessed the trio. "We need to think, not just fight," Srinidhi's voice echoed faintly through the water, his words bubbling up to the surface. "This creature is not just a brute, it has intelligence." Arya nodded, her eyes scanning their surroundings. "Perhaps there's something here that can help us. These ruins might hold clues." Tharun's eyes followed the alien fish's movements, his muscles tensed. "Or maybe we need to outmaneuver it. It's fast, but we're not helpless." Srinidhi's mind raced. The creature had nearly thwarted their quest, but it hadn't yet attacked with full force. It seemed to be testing them, waiting for a mistake. He recalled Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar's teachings, the wisdom that often came in cryptic phrases. "Sometimes, the way forward is not through strength, but through understanding," Srinidhi muttered, remembering his guru's words. He signaled Arya and Tharun to follow him as he swam towards a nearby structure, an ancient archway covered in luminescent algae. The alien fish followed, its eyes locked onto their every move. As they reached the archway, Arya's sharp gaze caught sight of intricate carvings on the stone. "Look," she pointed. "These symbols, could they be a message?" Srinidhi examined the carvings, the patterns forming a sequence that seemed to tell a story. "It's a riddle," he realized, "a way to outsmart the Guardian." Tharun's eyes widened with realization. If we can solve it, we might find a way to distract or even pacify the alien fish. The carvings depicted a series of aquatic creatures, each one linked to a particular element: water, light, and shadow. Srinidhi traced the patterns with his fingers, his mind piecing together the puzzle. "Water flows, light guides, shadow hides," he whispered, the words forming a mantra. "We need to use the elements against it." Arya's eyes lit up with understanding. "Light, it's drawn to light. If we can create a distraction with our torches, we might be able to confuse it." Tharun nodded, already reaching for his underwater torch. "And shadows. If we blend into the ruins, it might lose track of us." Srinidhi smiled, the plan taking shape. "Let's do this." They moved swiftly, Arya igniting her torch and waving it to create a dazzling display of light. The alien fish's eyes followed the glow, its movements becoming erratic. Tharun used the moment to swim towards a dark crevice, his form blending into the shadows. Srinidhi took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He swam with movements deliberate but calm. The creature lunged, drawn by the flickering light, but Srinidhi veered away at the last moment, leading it towards the ruins. As the alien fish pursued the light, Arya extinguished her torch, plunging the area into darkness. The creature thrashed in confusion, its eyes searching for the lost glow. Thurun emerged from the shadows, striking the creature's flank with a blunt end of his sword, further disorienting it. Srinidhi seized the opportunity, swimming towards another archway that led deeper into the city. "This way," he called to his companions. They swam through the passage, the alien fish momentarily distracted. As they emerged on the other side, Srinidhi looked back, his heart racing. The creature lingered in the ruins, its eyes still scanning for the elusive light. "We did it," Arya panted, her voice filled with relief. Thurun grinned, his eyes shining with triumph. "We outsmarted it." Srinidhi nodded, his mind already focused on the next challenge. "Let's keep moving. Samudhram holds more secrets, and we're not done yet." They swam onward, the ancient city unfolding before them, each stroke bringing them closer to their ultimate goal. The journey was far from over, but with each challenge they overcame, Srinidhi felt his resolve strengthen, his wisdom deepen. The golden treasure awaited, but the true value lay in the bonds they forged and the lessons they learned along the way. The caverns loomed ahead, their entrance a yawning maw of darkness that seemed to swallow the light. Srinidhi, Arya, and Thurun stood at the threshold, the eerie silence of the place weighing heavily upon them. The stillness was a stark contrast to the turmoil they had faced in the depths of Samudhram. Srinidhi took a deep breath, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sword. "This is it," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "The heart of Samudhram lies beyond these caverns. We must be vigilant." Arya, her keen eyes scanning the shadows, nodded. "The air is different here," she noted. "Colder, heavier." Thurun shifted uneasily, his muscles tense. "I've faced many dangers alongside you, Srinidhi, but something about this place feels unnatural." They stepped into the cavern, their footsteps echoing off the damp stone walls. The darkness was almost palpable, shadows dancing and flickering with every movement. Srinidhi held his torch high, the flames casting an orange glow that barely penetrated the abyss. The air grew colder as they delved deeper, each breath a visible puff in the dim light. Strange sounds echoed from the depths, drips of water, the distant rustle of unseen creatures, and an occasional, almost imperceptible hiss that sent shivers down their spines. The walls were adorned with ancient carvings, depicting scenes of a once great civilization now lost to time and water. Arya paused, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns of one such carving. "These tell a story," she observed. "A warning, perhaps, or a history of what happened here." Srinidhi joined her, studying the carvings with a furrowed brow. "It's as if they knew this city would be submerged, that it would become a place of legend." Thurun, ever the pragmatist, kept his eyes on the path ahead. "We should keep moving. Whatever lies in these shadows won't wait for us to decipher ancient tales." As they ventured further, the cavern widened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in the darkness above. The floor was uneven, littered with the remnants of collapsed structures and debris. Pools of stagnant water dotted the area, their surfaces reflecting the faint torchlight like dark mirrors. Suddenly, Arya's keen senses picked up a subtle movement in the periphery of her vision. She raised her hand, signaling the others to halt. "Something's here," she whispered, her voice tight with tension. Srinidhi's grip on his sword tightened, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of threat. "Stay close," he instructed, his tone calm but authoritative. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The trio moved cautiously, every sense on high alert. The oppressive silence was broken only by the soft splash of their footsteps in the shallow pools. The flickering light of the torch seemed to create more shadows than it dispelled, each one a potential hiding place for unseen dangers. As they pressed on, the cavern seemed to close in around them, the walls narrowing and the ceiling lowering until they were almost crawling through tight, claustrophobic passages. The sense of unease grew with every step, a tangible presence that gnawed at their resolve. Srinidhi's thoughts turned to his guru, Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar, whose teachings had guided him through many perils. He recalled the sage's words, "In the darkest places, the light within you must shine brightest." Drawing strength from this, Srinidhi steeled himself, determined to lead his companions through whatever lay ahead. They emerged from the narrow passage into another cavern, this one even more foreboding than the last. The air was thick with moisture, the walls glistening with a slick, almost oily sheen. Strange, phosphorescent fungi clung to the rocks, casting an eerie greenish glow. Arya touched one of the fungi gently, her brow furrowing. "These are unlike anything I've seen before. They almost seem alive." Tharun, ever the skeptic, grunted. "Everything here seems alive, and none of it friendly." Srinidhi's torch flickered, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. "We need to keep moving," he urged. "There's no telling what else we might encounter in these depths." With every step, the sense of foreboding grew, the darkness pressing in around them like a living entity. As they ventured deeper into the heart of Samudhram, the dark caverns yawned open before them, a vast labyrinth of shadows and echoes. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground and ceiling, creating a perilous path that seemed to twist and turn endlessly. The air was thick with an earthy dampness, and the faint sound of dripping water reverberated through the cavernous expanse. Every step the trio took echoed ominously, heightening the sense of foreboding that enveloped them. Srinidhi led the way, the light from his torch casting eerie, flickering shadows on the cavern walls. Arya and Tharun followed closely, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. The weight of their journey pressed heavily upon them, but their determination remained unyielding. "This place feels alive," Arya whispered, her voice barely audible above the constant dripping. "It's as if the shadows themselves are watching us." Srinidhi nodded, his grip tightening on the hilt of his sword. "Stay alert. We don't know what lies ahead." As they ventured deeper, the cavern seemed to constrict, the walls closing in around them. The narrow passages forced them to move in single file, heightening their vulnerability. The flickering torchlight revealed ancient carvings on the walls, depicting scenes of battles and mythical creatures long forgotten. Tharun paused to examine one such carving, his fingers tracing the intricate designs. "These carvings, they tell a story, a warning, perhaps?" "Perhaps," Srinidhi replied, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. "But we must keep moving." Suddenly, a low, rumbling hiss echoed through the cavern, sending a shiver down their spines. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a menacing presence lurking just beyond the reach of their torchlight. They exchanged wary glances, their senses on high alert. "Did you hear that?" Arya asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes," Srinidhi answered, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the darkness. "Stay close." As they pressed forward, the hiss grew louder, more insistent. The shadows seemed to shift and writhe, as if alive with malevolent intent. Then, without warning, a massive form slithered into view, its scales glistening in the torchlight. The Serpent of Shadows had emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The serpent's scales were a deep, iridescent black, blending seamlessly with the shadows around it. Its body coiled and uncoiled with a fluid grace, moving with lightning speed. The cavern seemed to pulse with its presence, the very air charged with tension. "Ready yourselves," Srinidhi commanded, his voice steady despite the growing fear gnawing at his heart. The serpent struck with blinding speed, its massive head darting toward them with lethal precision. Srinidhi barely managed to raise his shield in time, the force of the impact sending him staggering backward. Arya loosed an arrow, but the serpent's scales deflected it harmlessly. Tharun lunged forward, his sword flashing in the torchlight as he aimed for the serpent's underbelly. The creature twisted and turned, evading the strike with uncanny agility. It lashed out with its tail, sending Tharun crashing into the cavern wall. "We need to outsmart it," Srinidhi called out, his mind racing to find a solution. "Physical strength alone won't defeat this beast." Arya nodded, her eyes scanning the cavern for any advantage they could use. "Look at the carvings," she said suddenly, her voice urgent. "They might hold a clue." Srinidhi glanced at the carvings, his mind piecing together the ancient symbols. "The serpent blends into the shadows," he murmured, a realization dawning on him. "We need to bring it into the light." "How?" Tharun asked, wincing as he pushed himself to his feet. "Follow my lead," Srinidhi replied, his voice resolute. "Arya, keep it distracted. Tharun, help me with the torches." With coordinated precision, Arya fired a volley of arrows, drawing the serpent's attention. Srinidhi and Tharun moved swiftly, lighting additional torches and placing them strategically around the cavern. The increased light began to pierce the shadows, revealing the serpent's form in stark relief. As the light intensified, the serpent's advantage diminished. It hissed angrily, its movements becoming more frantic and less precise. Seizing the opportunity, Srinidhi charged forward, his sword aimed at the creature's vulnerable underbelly. With a powerful thrust, he struck true, the blade piercing the serpent's flesh. The beast let out a deafening roar, its body convulsing in pain. Arya and Tharun joined the assault, their combined efforts overwhelming the serpent. Finally, with one last shudder, the creature collapsed. Its lifeless form sprawled across the cavern floor. Breathing heavily, the trio stood over the fallen serpent, their faces illuminated by the flickering torchlight. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. "We did it," Arya said, a mixture of relief and exhaustion in her voice. "Indeed," Srinidhi replied, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. "But our journey is far from over. We must press on." With renewed determination, they continued deeper into the caverns, their steps guided by the light of their torches and the strength of their resolve. The air in the caverns grew colder, and the shadows seemed to dance with a life of their own. Srinidhi's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of the Serpent of Shadows. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder of the danger lurking. Arya and Tharun stood close, their weapons ready, their breaths shallow and synchronized. A sudden rustle echoed through the cavern, and a flicker of movement caught Srinidhi's eye. The serpent, enormous and serpentine, shimmered briefly before melting back into the shadows, its scales blending seamlessly with the darkness. It was a creature of pure stealth, a predator born of the void. "Stay alert," Srinidhi whispered, his voice barely audible. "It could be anywhere." Arya nodded, her bow drawn taut, an arrow poised to fly. Tharun's grip on his sword tightened, his muscles coiled like a spring. The tension was palpable, a silent promise of the battle to come. Without warning, the serpent struck. It lunged from the darkness with terrifying speed, its fangs glistening with venom. Srinidhi barely managed to sidestep the attack, the serpent's head smashing into the cavern wall with a thunderous crash. He swung his sword in a wide arc, but the serpent was already gone, vanished back into the shadows. "Over there!" Arya shouted, releasing her arrow. It flew true, but the serpent twisted in midair, the arrow barely grazing its scales before clattering to the ground. The serpent lunged again, this time targeting Tharun. He raised his sword just in time, the blade colliding with the creature's head. The force of the impact sent Tharun stumbling back, but he maintained his footing, eyes locked on the serpent. Srinidhi's mind raced. The serpent's speed and stealth made it a formidable foe. Direct attacks would be futile. They needed a strategy, a way to outmaneuver the creature. He glanced at the cavern walls, noticing the jagged rocks and narrow passages. "Arya, Tharun," he called out, "we need to trap it. Drive it towards that narrow passage. It won't be able to move as freely there." Arya nodded, her eyes sharp and determined. She moved swiftly, positioning herself at one end of the passage, her arrows ready. Tharun took his place opposite her, sword raised, ready to strike. Srinidhi positioned himself between them and the serpent, his sword held high. He took a deep breath, focusing all his energy on the task at hand. With a loud shout, he charged at the serpent, swinging his sword with precise, calculated strikes. The serpent hissed, its movements becoming more erratic as it tried to evade the blows. The trio's coordination was seamless. Each time the serpent tried to escape, Arya's arrows and Tharun's sword forced it back towards the passage. Srinidhi's relentless attacks kept it off balance, its usual agility hampered by the narrow confines of the cavern. Finally, the serpent was cornered. It writhed and hissed, its eyes glowing with malice. Srinidhi saw his chance. He lunged forward, driving his sword deep into the serpent's side. The creature let out a deafening screech, its body convulsing as it thrashed in agony. Arya and Tharun joined the assault, their weapons striking with precision and force. The serpent's movements grew weaker, its strength waning. With one final, desperate swing, Srinidhi severed the serpent's head from its body. The cavern fell silent, the echoes of the battle fading into the depths. Srinidhi lowered his sword, his breath coming in heavy gasps. Arya and Tharun stood beside him, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. "We did it," Arya said. her voice barely above a whisper. Srinidhi nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips. We did. Together. Tharun clapped a hand on Srinidhi's shoulder. Your plan worked. We couldn't have done it without you. Srinidhi shook his head. It was all of us. We fight as one, or we don't fight at all. With the serpent defeated, the path to the heart of Samudram lay open before them. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. As they ventured deeper into the caverns, the golden treasure of Samudram awaited, a beacon of hope and destiny. Emerging from the dark caverns, the trio found themselves standing at the edge of a vast crystalline lake. The air was thick with an otherworldly silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against stone. Above them, the sky shimmered with an ethereal light, casting a surreal glow over the submerged ruins of Samudram. Srinidhi took a deep breath, his eyes tracing the intricate patterns of the ancient city below. We've come so far, he murmured, a mix of exhaustion and determination in his voice. Beside him, Arya adjusted her quiver, her sharp eyes scanning the skies, while Tharun rested his hand on the hilt of his sword, ever vigilant. Without warning, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the air, carrying with it a wave of intense heat. The trio instinctively took a step back, shielding their eyes from the blinding light that followed. As the brilliance subsided, they looked up to see a majestic figure descending from the heavens. The firebird phoenix, with its feathers ablaze in hues of gold, red, and orange, soared gracefully above them. Each beat of its wings sent ripples of fire through the sky, illuminating the ruins below. The bird's eyes, burning with ancient wisdom, locked onto Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun as it circled above them. Arya's breath caught in her throat. It's beautiful, she whispered, unable to tear her gaze away from the magnificent creature. Tharun nodded, his usual bravado tempered by awe. And deadly. We must tread carefully. Srinidhi stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. We seek passage, mighty phoenix, he called out, his voice steady despite the intense heat radiating from the bird. We mean no harm. The phoenix let out a powerful cry that echoed through the valley, its flames intensifying. It swooped down, landing on a nearby ledge with a grace that belied its size. The ground beneath it sizzled and smoked, but the bird remained unscathed, its fiery plumage flickering like a living flame. A deep, resonant voice filled the air, emanating from the phoenix itself. To seek passage, one must prove their worth. Answer my riddle, and you shall pass unharmed. Fail, and you shall face the wrath of my flames. Srinidhi exchanged a glance with Arya and Tharun, who nodded in silent support. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenge. We are ready. The phoenix's eyes bore into Srinidhi's, and it spoke once more. I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, and I can drown. What am I? Silence fell over the group as they pondered the riddle. Arya furrowed her brow, her mind racing through possibilities. Tharun, usually quick with an answer, seemed stumped, his eyes darting between the phoenix and Srinidhi. Srinidhi closed his eyes, allowing his thoughts to flow freely. Images of their journey flashed before him, the dense forests, the treacherous caverns, the fierce battles. Then it came to him, as clear as the flames before him. Fire, he said firmly, opening his eyes to meet the phoenix's gaze. The answer is fire. For a moment, the world stood still. Then the phoenix let out a triumphant cry, its flames flaring with brilliant intensity. You have answered correctly, brave warrior. You may pass. The bird took to the skies once more, its fiery feathers trailing behind it like a comet. As it ascended, the heat around them subsided, and a path of golden light appeared, leading deeper into the heart of Samudram. Srinidhi turned to Arya and Tharun, a triumphant smile on his face. Let's go. The treasure awaits. With renewed determination, the trio followed the path of light, their hearts filled with hope and the promise of victory. The golden path shimmered under their feet as they ventured deeper into Samudram, the ambient glow lighting their way through the dense, mystical landscape. The air grew tense as the phoenix continued. I am not alive, but I grow. I have no lungs, but I need air. I have no mouth, but water kills me. What am I? Srinidhi furrowed his brow, the riddle swirling in his mind like a tempest. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the lives of Arya and Tharun hanging in the balance. His mind raced, dissecting each word with the precision of a warrior sharpening his blade. Arya's voice broke the silence, her eyes wide with realization. "It's fire," she whispered, her breath catching. "It has to be fire." Srinidhi looked at her, then back at the phoenix. "Fire," he declared, his voice steady and resolute. "The answer is fire." The phoenix's flames flared brighter for a moment, casting long shadows across their faces. Then, as if satisfied, it lowered its head in acknowledgement. "You have answered wisely, Srinidhi Ranganathan. The path is yours." With a powerful beat of its wings, the phoenix ascended, its fiery form dissolving into the sky. The air cooled, the oppressive heat lifting as if a spell had been broken. Tharun exhaled deeply, his shoulders relaxing. "That was close," he said, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "You did well, Srinidhi." Srinidhi nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Arya stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on Srinidhi's arm. "We're almost there," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Together, we can face whatever comes next." Srinidhi turned to her, his eyes reflecting the shared resolve between them. "Yes, together," he agreed, feeling the bond between them strengthen. The skies above Samudhram shimmered with an otherworldly brilliance as the firebird phoenix hovered before Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun. The majestic creature's feathers blazed like molten gold, casting flickering shadows on the trio's faces. The riddle had been a test of wit and wisdom, and Srinidhi's heart drummed in his chest as he awaited the phoenix's judgment. The phoenix's fiery eyes bore into Srinidhi's soul, searching for any trace of deceit or hesitation. The silence was heavy, each second stretching into eternity. Finally, the phoenix spoke, its voice a harmonious blend of crackling fire and ethereal melody. "You have answered with the truth of your heart, Srinidhi Ranganathan. You have proven your wisdom and courage. You may pass." As the phoenix's wings unfurled, a path of shimmering light formed in the air, leading towards the heart of Samudhram. The bird's flames no longer threatened to incinerate, but instead illuminated the way forward. Srinidhi felt a surge of relief and gratitude, his mind replaying the teachings of his guru, Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar. The sage's wisdom had guided him, and now it was his own resolve that carried him through. Arya stepped closer to Srinidhi, her eyes reflecting both admiration and pride. "You did it, Srinidhi. We're one step closer." Tharun clapped his friend on the shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "I knew you had it in you, old friend. Let's not waste any time." Together, they ascended the luminous path, the air around them crackling with the phoenix's lingering energy. Below, the submerged city of Samudhram lay in silent anticipation, its ancient secrets waiting to be unveiled. The light grew brighter, almost blinding, as they reached the apex of their ascent. Then, with a final, resounding cry, the phoenix soared upwards, disappearing into the heavens in a blaze of glory. The path dissolved into a gentle cascade of golden sparks, settling like dew on the trio's armor. Srinidhi took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his journey and the immense responsibility of what lay ahead. He glanced at Arya and Tharun, their determined faces reflecting his own resolve. They had come too far to falter now. With renewed vigor, they pressed on, descending into the heart of Samudhram. The ancient city's architecture, once obscured by the waters, now revealed itself in intricate detail. Pillars carved with glyphs and murals depicting long-forgotten tales lined their path. The air was thick with the scent of ancient stone and the faint hum of magic. As they ventured deeper, Srinidhi could feel the layers of history enveloping them, each step echoing with the footsteps of those who had walked these halls millennia ago. The realization that they were part of something much larger than themselves settled over him like a mantle of responsibility. Arya's keen eyes darted around, taking in every detail. "This place, it's like a living memory. Every corner tells a story." Tharun nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "And we're writing our own chapter in it. Let's make sure it's one worth telling." Srinidhi led the way, navigating through the labyrinthine passages with the sacred map as their guide. The path was fraught with challenges, but the wisdom he had gained, the strength he had forged, and the allies by his side made him feel invincible. They moved with purpose, their steps synchronized by a shared goal. The golden treasure awaited, but Srinidhi knew that the true treasure was the growth they had experienced, the bonds they had strengthened, and the wisdom they had gained. As they approached a grand archway, adorned with symbols of protection and prosperity, Srinidhi paused. He turned to Arya and Tharun, his voice steady and filled with conviction. "We're almost there. Whatever lies beyond this, remember why we're here. For Boripura, for our people, and for the journey that has brought us together." With a unified nod, they stepped through the archway, ready to face the heart of Samudram and whatever challenges it held. The path forward was uncertain, but with their courage, wisdom, and unwavering loyalty, they were prepared to conquer whatever lay ahead. The heart of Samudram lay before them, an ethereal spectacle of golden light shimmering through the sunken ruins. The underwater city, once grand and bustling, now stood still, a testament to the passage of time and the secrets it held. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun moved cautiously, the weight of their journey pressing on their shoulders, heavy yet exhilarating. The chamber they entered was vast, its domed ceiling decorated with intricate carvings that seemed to tell the story of an ancient civilization. Columns of coral and encrusted jewels lined the walls, and in the center of the room, a pedestal stood, radiating an almost blinding golden glow. The treasure, golden coins, jeweled artifacts, and mysterious scrolls piled high, glistening under the soft light filtering through cracks in the ceiling. Srinidhi paused, taking in the sight before him. "We've made it," he whispered, the awe in his voice palpable. His eyes scanned the treasure, but lingered on the scrolls, sensing that they held knowledge far more valuable than any gold. Arya stepped forward, her keen eyes darting around the room, assessing for any hidden dangers. "It feels too easy," she muttered, her hand resting on the hilt of her bow. "After everything we've faced, could this truly be it?" Tharun, ever the optimist, approached the pedestal with a wide grin. "We've earned this, Arya. Every step, every battle, it led us here. Let's not doubt our victory now." Srinidhi nodded, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the treasure was not the end but a beginning. His fingers traced the edges of an ancient scroll, the parchment delicate and worn. "These scrolls," he said, more to himself than his companions, "they might hold the wisdom to truly change Boripura's fate." As he carefully unrolled one, the symbols and letters seemed to dance before his eyes, ancient and foreign. Arya peered over his shoulder, her curiosity piqued. "Can you read it?" "Not entirely," Srinidhi admitted, "but I recognize some of the symbols from my studies with Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar. This could be a language of the ancients, a script lost to time." He glanced at Arya, his eyes determined. "We must bring these back to the Guru. He will know how to decipher them." Tharun, meanwhile, had begun to gather some of the golden coins, his thoughts on the immediate future. "Imagine what this treasure can do for our people, Srinidhi. Schools, hospitals, food for the hungry. This is a blessing." Srinidhi smiled, his heart swelling with pride for his friend's noble thoughts. "Indeed, Tharun, this treasure will bring prosperity, but the knowledge it holds." He looked back at the scrolls, his expression resolute. "That will bring wisdom and lasting change." Arya, ever vigilant, continued to survey their surroundings. "We should not linger too long. We've been fortunate so far, but the way back will not be without its challenges." Srinidhi nodded. "You're right. Let's take what we can carry and make our way out of here." He began to carefully select scrolls and artifacts, mindful of their fragility. As they gathered the treasure, a sense of completion, yet anticipation, filled the air. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun made their way back through the chamber, their hearts filled with hope and determination. They had conquered the submerged city of Samudram, but the true test of their journey lay ahead, returning to Boripura and using what they had found to forge a brighter future. The golden chamber of Samudram shimmered with an ethereal glow, casting soft, dancing reflections onto the walls. The air was thick with the scent of ancient relics and the weight of history, a testament to the countless years the treasure had lain hidden beneath the crystal-clear lakes of Boripura. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun stood at the entrance, their eyes wide with awe and disbelief. The treasure was beyond anything they had imagined, piles of gold coins, intricate jewelry, and artifacts that spoke of a long-lost civilization. Srinidhi stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached out to touch a golden chalice, its surface cold and smooth under his fingers. The weight of the journey, the challenges they had overcome, and the growth he had experienced all seemed to culminate in this moment. He turned to Arya and Tharun, their expressions mirroring his own sense of wonder. Arya, her bow slung over her shoulder, approached a statue of a goddess, her eyes tracing the delicate carvings. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice filled with reverence. "But it feels different." Tharun, ever the practical one, picked up a golden bracelet, examining it closely. "Different how?" he asked, glancing at her. "It's not just the treasure," Arya continued, her gaze shifting to Srinidhi. "It's everything we've been through to get here. The battles, the riddles, the creatures, they all led us to this point, but it's not the gold that matters. It's what we've learned, how we've changed." Srinidhi felt a surge of gratitude for his companions. Arya's sharp mind and unwavering loyalty, Tharun's strength and steadfast friendship, they had been as crucial to this journey as his own courage and determination. He looked around the chamber, the treasure suddenly seeming less significant compared to the bonds they had forged. "She's right," Srinidhi said, his voice steady and thoughtful. "The real treasure isn't the gold. It's the wisdom we've gained, the strength we've found in ourselves and each other. This journey has made us more than we were before." Tharun nodded, a rare smile breaking across his rugged face. "It's true. We've faced things we never thought possible, and we've come out stronger, together." The three of them stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their realization settling over them. Srinidhi felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. The treasure of Samudhram was indeed valuable, but it was their journey, their growth, and their newfound wisdom that would truly change their kingdom's fate. As they began to gather some of the artifacts, carefully selecting pieces that would be of the most benefit to their people, Srinidhi's thoughts turned to King Srihari. The wise ruler had entrusted him with this quest, believing in his potential. Srinidhi knew that the king would understand the true value of their journey and would use the treasure wisely to benefit Borapura. The chamber's glow seemed to intensify, as if the city of Samudhram itself was acknowledging their realization. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun shared a look of mutual respect and understanding. They had come seeking gold, but they were leaving with something far more precious. With their treasures in hand and hearts filled with newfound wisdom, they prepared to leave the Golden Chamber. The journey home would be long, but they were ready. They had faced the depths of Samudhram and emerged not just as survivors, but as transformed individuals with a deeper understanding of themselves and their world. In the heart of Samudhram, the golden glow from the hidden treasure chamber illuminated the faces of Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun as they stood in silent awe. The air was thick with the scent of sea salt and ancient stone, mingling with the soft lapping of water against the submerged ruins. The treasure, a vast collection of golden artifacts, glittered with an almost ethereal light, reflecting the trio's mixed emotions of triumph, exhaustion, and contemplation. Srinidhi, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, turned to his companions. "We've done it," he said, his voice reverberating softly in the cavernous space. "But our journey isn't over. We must return home." Arya, her eyes still fixed on the treasure, nodded slowly. "This journey has changed us," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've faced dangers we never imagined, and yet here we stand." Tharun, ever the steadfast friend, clapped a hand on Srinidhi's shoulder. "And we'll face the journey back together, just as we did coming here," he said with a reassuring smile. "Let's prepare to leave this place." They moved with a sense of purpose, gathering their belongings and checking their provisions. The weight of the journey seemed to linger in the air, a palpable reminder of the trials they had overcome. As they worked, their movements were punctuated by the occasional clink of metal and the rustle of fabric. Srinidhi paused, gazing at the treasure one last time. "It's strange," he mused aloud, "how something that seemed so important at the start now feels secondary to the experiences we've had and the growth we've achieved." Arya looked up, her expression thoughtful. "The treasure may be golden, but the real wealth lies in the bonds we've strengthened and the wisdom we've gained." Tharun chuckled softly. "Leave it to you two to find philosophy in a pile of gold," he teased, though his eyes betrayed his agreement. "But you're right, we've all grown in ways we never expected." As they finished their preparations, a quiet camaraderie settled over the group. The hardships they had faced had forged a bond stronger than any treasure. They moved with a newfound confidence, each step a testament to their resilience and determination. The path back through Samudram would be no less treacherous, but with their collective experiences and newfound wisdom, they felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. The submerged city, with its silent guardians and hidden secrets, seemed almost to bid them farewell as they made their way toward the exit. Srinidhi led the way, his steps sure and steady. Arya followed, her keen eyes scanning their surroundings, ever vigilant. Tharun brought up the rear, his presence a reassuring anchor. Together, they moved as one, a seamless unit bound by shared trials and triumphs. As they emerged from the heart of Samudram, the light of the outside world began to filter through the water, casting shimmering patterns on the ancient stone. The journey home beckoned, filled with the promise of new challenges and the comfort of familiar faces. With a final glance back at the treasure chamber, Srinidhi took a deep breath. "Let's go home," he said, his voice filled with a quiet resolve. And so they began their journey back, the experiences of Samudram etched indelibly in their hearts and minds, ready to face whatever awaited them in the land of Boripura. With the golden treasure safely stowed away, Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun began their journey back through the heart of Samudram. The underwater city's eerie, glowing ruins seemed less intimidating now, having been conquered and traversed. The aquatic light shimmered around them, casting a ghostly glow on their faces as they moved through the ancient, submerged streets. Srinidhi took the lead, his eyes scanning their familiar path. The sense of triumph was tangible, yet his mind was reflective, replaying the many trials they had faced. The weight of his newly gained wisdom felt both heavy and comforting, a reminder of the growth he had undergone. Arya walked beside him, her bow slung across her back, her steps light and assured. "It's strange," she said, breaking the silence. "I feel like we've been gone for years. Everything here seems different now." Tharun, trailing slightly behind, chuckled. "That's because we're different. We've faced sorceresses, mythical beasts, and riddles. We've grown." Srinidhi nodded, glancing over his shoulder. "Indeed, each challenge has taught us something valuable. Nuthari's deception, the three-headed lion's fury, the cunning of the alien fish, they've all shaped us." They reached the dark caverns, the shadows still whispering secrets of the Serpent of Shadows. The memory of its swift, lethal strikes was fresh in their minds. Srinidhi paused at the entrance, his hand brushing against the cavern wall. "Remember how we outmaneuvered the serpent? It wasn't just strength, it was our unity and wit." Arya smiled, her eyes twinkling with the memory. "And your quick thinking, Srinidhi, you led us with such clarity." Tharun stepped forward, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "You've always been a leader, but this journey has refined you. You've become someone we can rely on, not just in battle, but in wisdom." As they ventured further, the path grew more familiar, the echoes of past battles lingering in the air. They navigated the narrow passages, their movements synchronized, a testament to their shared experiences. Emerging from the caverns, the trio was greeted by the sight of Samudram's entrance. The remnants of the battle with the three-headed lion were still evident, the ground scarred by their fierce struggle. Arya and Tharun exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of pride and awe. Srinidhi took a deep breath, the crisp air filling his lungs. "Our journey is far from over, but we've conquered the most perilous parts. Now it's time to bring the treasure home and share our tale." They crossed the threshold, leaving the submerged city behind, its mysteries and dangers now part of their story. As they moved through the dense forests, the familiar sounds of Boripura began to reach their ears. The chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the distant murmur of streams. Srinidhi turned to his companions, a determined look in his eyes. "We've faced the unknown and triumphed. Now, let's return to our people, not just with treasure, but with the wisdom and strength we've gained." Arya and Tharun nodded, their hearts swelling with anticipation and pride. Together, they pressed on, ready to share the fruits of their journey and the lessons they had learned. The dense forest of Boripura welcomed them back with open arms, its familiar scents and sounds a soothing balm after the perils they had faced. Sunlight filtered through the thick canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Birds sang their melodious tunes, and the rustling of leaves underfoot created a rhythm that matched the steady beat of their hearts. Srinidhi led the way, his steps confident and purposeful. Arya and Tharun followed closely, their eyes scanning the surroundings, alert yet relaxed in the familiarity of their homeland. The weight of their journey seemed to lift slightly with each step closer to home. As they moved deeper into the forest, the sound of laughter and chatter reached their ears. They rounded a bend and found themselves at the edge of a clearing where a group of villagers had gathered. Children played games, chasing each other with joyful shrieks, while adults tended to various tasks, their faces lined with the warmth of community life. One of the children, a young boy with a mop of unruly hair, spotted them first. His eyes widened in recognition and excitement. "It's Srinidhi, Arya, Tharun!" he shouted, pointing towards them. The villagers turned as one, their faces lighting up with expressions of joy and relief. They surged forward, surrounding the trio with a chorus of greetings and questions. Hands reached out to touch them, as if confirming that these heroes were indeed real and not figments of hopeful imaginations. "Srinidhi, you've returned!" exclaimed an elderly woman, her voice trembling with emotion. "We prayed for your safety every day." Srinidhi smiled warmly, taking the woman's hands in his. "Your prayers have guided us home, Auntie. We are grateful for your unwavering support." Arya found herself surrounded by a group of young girls, their eyes shining with admiration. "Tell us about the battles, Arya. Were you scared?" one of them asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and awe. Arya knelt to their level, her eyes softening. "There were moments of fear, yes, but courage is not the absence of fear. It's facing it head on, and I had my friends by my side, which made all the difference." Tharun, meanwhile, was embraced by an old friend, a burly man with a booming laugh. "By the gods, Tharun, you've grown stronger. Did you wrestle any giants on your journey?" Tharun chuckled, clapping his friend on the back. "No giants, but we did face creatures that would make your hair stand on end. It's good to be back, my friend." As the villagers continued to celebrate their return, sharing food and stories, Srinidhi took a moment to step back and observe. The sense of community, the love and support they had from these people, filled him with a profound sense of purpose. This was what he had fought for, what he had risked his life to protect. A familiar voice called out from the crowd, and Srinidhi turned to see his childhood friend, Raghav, approaching. "Srinidhi, you've returned a hero," Raghav said, his eyes shining with pride. Srinidhi clasped his friend's shoulder. "I couldn't have done it alone. Arya and Tharun were with me every step of the way. We all played our parts." Raghav nodded, his gaze shifting to Arya and Tharun, who were engaged in animated conversations with the villagers. "We are lucky to have such brave souls among us." The sun began its descent, casting a golden hue over the clearing. The villagers lit lanterns, and the celebration continued into the evening. Laughter and music filled the air, a testament to the resilience and joy of the people of Boripura. As the night deepened, Srinidhi found himself sitting by a fire, Arya and Tharun by his side. The flickering flames reflected in their eyes, and a comfortable silence settled over them. They had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged victorious, but the journey had changed them in ways they were only beginning to understand. "We've come far," Arya said softly, breaking the silence, "but I feel like our journey has just begun." Tharun nodded, his gaze distant. "There's so much more to do, to protect and build, but for now, we rest and celebrate with our people." Srinidhi looked at his companions, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Together, we will face whatever comes next, for Boripura, for our home." Surrounded by the warmth and love of their community, the heroes of Boripura reconnected with the people they had fought to protect, their hearts full of hope for the future. As the sun began its descent, casting a golden hue over the outskirts of Boripura, Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun walked slowly, the trials of their journey behind them. The warm glow bathed the landscape, creating a serene atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the perils they had faced. "We've come a long way," Tharun mused, his voice carrying a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. He tightened his grip on his sword, the same weapon that had seen him through countless battles. "I don't think I would have believed it if someone told us we'd be back here with the treasure." Arya nodded, her fingers gently tracing the fletching of an arrow. Her keen eyes, which had once been sharp with the intent to protect, now softened with reflection. It's not just about the treasure, is it? It's about what we've become. I never imagined we'd face sorceresses, mythical beasts, and riddles from ancient birds. Srinidhi stopped, turning to face his companions. Indeed, Arya, this journey has transformed us. We started as warriors seeking a treasure, but we've returned as something more, he said, his voice steady with newfound wisdom. We've encountered challenges that tested our strength, our minds, and our spirits. Each trial forced us to grow in ways we couldn't have foreseen. Arya's gaze met Srinidhi's, her expression serious. I learned that true strength isn't just about wielding a bow. It's about the courage to face the unknown and the wisdom to trust in our skills and each other. And loyalty, Tharun added, his tone firm. I've learned that loyalty is not just about standing by each other's side in battle, but also about having faith in our friends and our mission, no matter how dire the circumstances. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the fragrant scent of blooming jasmine, a reminder of home. The trio walked on, their steps synchronized by the shared rhythm of their experiences. Srinidhi's thoughts drifted to Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar, whose teachings had been a guiding light throughout their perilous journey. Our guru's wisdom was our beacon. His lessons were not just about combat or strategy, but about understanding ourselves and our place in the world. Arya's eyes sparkled with gratitude. He prepared us for more than just the physical challenges. He taught us to see beyond the surface, to understand the deeper truths of our quest. Tharun's lips curved into a thoughtful smile. And King Srihari's trust in us, it's humbling. Knowing that he believed in our ability to succeed made us push forward, even when we doubted ourselves. As they approached the village boundary, the sounds of laughter and daily life grew louder, a comforting reminder of the normalcy they had fought to protect. Srinidhi paused, allowing the moment to wash over him. This treasure will indeed change Boripura's fate, but the true treasure lies in what we've learned and how we've grown. Arya placed a hand on Srinidhi's shoulder, her touch conveying solidarity and respect. We've forged bonds that will never break. We are not the same people who left this village. We return as heroes, yes, but more importantly, we return as wiser, stronger individuals. Tharun chuckled, a lightness in his voice that hadn't been there before, and with some incredible stories to tell the villagers. Srinidhi smiled, the weight of their journey lifting as they neared home. Let's share those stories and the lessons we've learned. Our journey may have ended, but our growth continues. Boripura will thrive, not just because of the treasure, but because of the strength and wisdom we bring back. Together, they stepped forward, ready to reunite with their people, each step a testament to their journey, their growth, and the unbreakable bond they now shared. The streets of Boripura erupted with life and color. Flowers garlanded every doorway, and vibrant tapestries flapped in the gentle breeze. Villagers thronged the streets, their faces alight with anticipation and joy. Children scampered around, their laughter mingling with the melodic tunes of flutes and drums played by street musicians. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun entered the main thoroughfare, their tired bodies straightening in pride as the crowd parted to make way for them. Cheers and applause rose in a crescendo, and the trio was soon surrounded by jubilant villagers. Srinidhi felt a swell of emotion, his heart brimming with gratitude and humility. These were his people, and their joy was a testament to the hard-won victory they had achieved together. "Look, it's Srinidhi," a young boy shouted, pointing excitedly. "The hero of Boripura." Arya, her bow slung across her back, smiled warmly at the villagers who reached out to touch her arm in admiration. Tharun, ever the stalwart companion, clasped hands with old friends and shared hearty laughs, his boisterous spirit infecting those around him. A path cleared ahead, revealing King Srihari standing on a raised platform, his regal presence commanding attention. His robes were a deep crimson, embroidered with golden threads that shimmered in the sunlight. His eyes, wise and kind, met Srinidhi's, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Srinidhi Ranganathan," King Srihari's voice boomed, silencing the crowd. "Arya and Tharun, today we celebrate not just your return, but your unparalleled bravery and loyalty. You have faced unimaginable dangers, and through your courage and wisdom, you have secured a future for Boripura." The villagers erupted into applause once more, and Srinidhi stepped forward, his gaze meeting King Srihari's. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady despite the overwhelming emotion. "This journey was not mine alone. Arya and Tharun stood by my side, their skills and loyalty unwavering. The strength of Boripura lies in its people, and I am honored to have served them." King Srihari nodded, his eyes twinkling with approval. "Indeed, Srinidhi, and it is for this reason that we honor you all as heroes today." He gestured to the crowd, and a group of young women approached, draping garlands of marigold around the trio's necks. The scent of the flowers, sweet and heady, filled Srinidhi's senses, grounding him in the reality of the moment. As the celebrations continued, Srinidhi found himself surrounded by familiar faces. An elderly woman, her eyes misty with tears, pressed a piece of cloth into his hands. "This was my son's," she said softly. "He would have been proud to see what you've done for our home." Srinidhi clutched the cloth, a sense of responsibility and honor washing over him. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I will cherish it always." Nearby, Arya was demonstrating her archery skills to a group of eager children, her eyes sparkling with delight as they gasped in awe at her precision. Tharun, ever the storyteller, was recounting their adventures to a rapt audience, his animated gestures and expressive voice bringing their journey to life once more. King Srihari approached Srinidhi, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your journey has changed you, Srinidhi. I see a man who has grown not just in strength, but in wisdom and heart." Srinidhi nodded, his gaze distant for a moment as he reflected on the trials they had faced. "The challenges were many, Your Majesty, but they have taught me the true meaning of courage and loyalty. I am grateful for the journey and for the companions who shared it with me." The king's smile widened, his eyes filled with pride. "And we are grateful for you, Srinidhi." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over Boripura, the celebrations continued. Music filled the air, and the streets were alive with dancing and laughter. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun stood at the heart of it all, their bond stronger than ever, their spirits lifted by the love and gratitude of their people. The grand doors of the royal palace swung open, revealing a grand hall bathed in the warm glow of countless torches and chandeliers. The opulence of the room was a stark contrast to the treacherous paths and dark caverns Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun had traversed. Intricately woven tapestries depicting the rich history of Boripura adorned the walls, and the scent of exotic flowers filled the air. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun stepped inside, their armor gleaming under the light. The hall was filled with the kingdom's most esteemed advisors, nobles, and warriors, all of whom turned to face the heroes with admiration and respect. King Srihari, standing at the far end atop a raised dais, looked every bit the regal figure, his eyes shining with pride. "Welcome, our brave warriors." King Srihari's voice resonated through the hall, commanding attention. "Today, we gather not just to celebrate your return, but to honor your unparalleled bravery and dedication to our land." A wave of applause broke out, echoing off the high ceilings. Srinidhi, feeling the weight of the journey lift slightly, glanced at Arya and Tharun. Arya's eyes sparkled, and Tharun's usual stoic expression softened into a rare smile. They had all endured so much, and now the kingdom recognized their sacrifices. King Srihari descended the dais, walking towards the trio. As he approached, Srinidhi knelt, followed by Arya and Tharun. The king placed a hand on Srinidhi's shoulder, urging him to rise. "You have done us proud, Srinidhi. Your courage and wisdom have brought hope to Boripura." Srinidhi stood tall, looking into the king's eyes. "It was an honor to serve our kingdom, Your Majesty, but I could not have done it without Arya's sharp eyes and Tharun's unwavering strength." King Srihari nodded, his gaze shifting to Arya and Tharun. "Indeed, your combined efforts have proven that unity and trust are our greatest strengths. Arya, your archery skills are unmatched. Tharun, your loyalty and swordsmanship are invaluable. You all have set a new standard for heroism." Arya stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you, Your Majesty. We did what was needed for Boripura. The bond we share made us stronger." Tharun added, "We faced many perils, but it was our determination to protect our homeland that saw us through. We owe our success to Boripura and its people." King Srihari raised his arms, silencing the hall. Let this day be remembered as a testament to their bravery. Let songs be sung and stories told of how Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun ventured into the unknown and returned victorious. Tonight, we celebrate not just their return, but the spirit of Boripura that thrives in each of us. The hall erupted in cheers, and the king's advisors approached to offer their personal congratulations. As the celebrations commenced with music and feasting, Srinidhi felt a sense of fulfillment. He exchanged a glance with Arya, who nodded solemnly, and Tharun, who clasped his shoulder with camaraderie. The night was filled with laughter, stories of their journey, and the joy of being home. Yet, amidst the festivities, Srinidhi's thoughts wandered back to the submerged city of Samudhram, the trials they had faced, and the wisdom they had gained. This journey had changed them all, forging an unbreakable bond. They were not just warriors, they were symbols of hope and resilience for Boripura. As the night drew on, King Srihari once again addressed the hall, his voice filled with gratitude and hope. Let us honor our heroes, not just with words, but by continuing to build a kingdom worthy of their sacrifices. Let their journey inspire us to strive for greatness in all we do. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun stood together, their hearts swelling with pride and a renewed sense of purpose. They had returned from their quest, not just with the golden treasure, but with a deeper understanding of their own strength and the unyielding spirit of their people. The villagers of Boripura buzzed with excitement, the air filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the clinking of celebratory toasts. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun wandered through the throngs of people, receiving heartfelt congratulations and expressions of gratitude. Children ran up to them, eyes wide with awe, while elders nodded approvingly, their weathered faces alight with pride. Srinidhi paused by a group of villagers gathered around a storyteller who was regaling them with the tale of their journey. The storyteller's voice rose and fell with dramatic flair, painting vivid pictures of the perils they had faced. Nearby, an elderly woman caught Srinidhi's eye and beckoned him over. "You, brave warrior, have given us hope," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "My grandson, Raju, has always dreamt of adventure but lacked the courage. Your deeds have filled him with determination." Raju, a boy of about 12, stepped forward shyly, clutching a wooden sword. "Sir, I want to be like you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Srinidhi knelt to meet the boy's gaze. "Courage comes from the heart, young Raju. Remember that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it." As Srinidhi stood, a young couple approached Arya, their faces glowing with gratitude. "We named our daughter after you," the woman said, holding a swaddled infant. "Arya's bravery and skill with a bow have inspired us deeply." Arya, touched by the gesture, gently stroked the baby's cheek. "May she grow strong and true like her namesake," she said softly, her eyes misting with emotion. Tharun, meanwhile, found himself surrounded by a group of eager young men, each vying for his attention. "Tell us, Tharun," one of them asked, "how did you fight the three-headed lion? We heard it was a fearsome battle." Tharun chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "It took more than just strength. We had to work as a team, each playing our part. Remember, even the mightiest warrior needs allies." As the night wore on, the trio moved through the crowd, each encounter weaving a tapestry of personal stories touched by their journey. They listened to tales of newfound courage, rekindled dreams, and aspirations ignited by the hero's return. A young girl, no more than 10, tugged at Srinidhi's tunic. "Will you tell us about the phoenix?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Srinidhi smiled and lifted her onto his shoulder. The phoenix was a magnificent creature, its feathers like flames dancing in the wind. To pass, I had to solve an ancient riddle. It was a test of wisdom as much as bravery. The villagers gathered around, listening intently as Srinidhi recounted the encounter, his voice carrying the magic of the moment. Arya and Tharun chimed in with their perspectives, adding depth to the tale. In a quieter corner, an old blacksmith approached Arya. "I crafted your bow years ago," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Seeing it in your hands, knowing it played a part in your victory, brings me great honor." Arya clasped the blacksmith's hands. "Your craftsmanship saved us many times. It is I who am honored to wield such a fine weapon." The celebrations continued long into the night. the stories of the villagers intertwining with those of the heroes. Each shared memory, each expression of gratitude and admiration added layers to the bond between Srinidhi, Arya, Tharun, and the people they had fought to protect. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Srinidhi looked around at the joyous faces of his friends and neighbors. The journey had been perilous and transformative, but it was moments like these, the connections and inspirations sparked by their deeds, that truly defined their victory. He exchanged a glance with Arya and Tharun, both of whom nodded in silent agreement. They had returned with the treasure, but the real wealth lay in the unity and hope that now permeated Boripura. The land was not just a kingdom, it was a thriving community, bound together by shared dreams and the courage to chase them. In the grand hall of the royal palace, the golden light from the chandeliers bathed the room in a warm glow. King Srihari sat at the head of a long, ornate table, flanked by his advisors. The walls were adorned with tapestries depicting the rich history of Boripura, and the air was filled with a sense of anticipation. Srinidhi stood near the entrance, still clad in the worn but proud armor that had accompanied him on his quest. His eyes scanned the faces of those present, noting the mix of curiosity and respect. "Welcome, Srinidhi." King Srihari's voice resonated through the hall, commanding attention. "Your bravery and perseverance have brought you back to us, and with you, the golden treasure of Samudhram." Srinidhi bowed deeply, his heart swelling with pride and humility. "Thank you, Your Majesty. It was an honor to serve Boripura." King Srihari gestured for Srinidhi to approach the table and take a seat. As Srinidhi moved forward, he could feel the weight of the moment. The treasure he had brought back was not just gold, it was hope, a promise of a brighter future for their kingdom. "We must discuss how best to use this treasure," King Srihari began, looking at his advisors. "It has the potential to transform Boripura in many ways. Your insights and wisdom are crucial in making these decisions." The advisors nodded in agreement, their expressions serious. One of them, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard, leaned forward. "Your Majesty, we could use the treasure to fortify our defenses. With the recent threats from neighboring kingdoms, strengthening our army and building more fortifications would ensure our safety." Another advisor, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, interjected. "While defense is important, we must also consider the well-being of our people. Investing in healthcare and education could uplift our society, making Boripura a beacon of prosperity and knowledge." King Srihari listened intently, his fingers steepled under his chin. He then turned to Srinidhi. "You have seen much on your journey, Srinidhi. Your perspective is invaluable. How do you believe we should use the treasure?" Srinidhi took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. Memories of his journey flooded his mind, the hidden waterfall, the treacherous forest, the fierce battles. Each challenge had taught him something profound. "Your Majesty, the treasure is indeed a blessing, but its true value lies in how it can unite and strengthen our kingdom. We must strike a balance between defense and development. Investing in our people's education and healthcare will create a foundation for a prosperous future. At the same time, ensuring our defenses are strong will protect the progress we make." The king's eyes gleamed with approval. "Wise words, Srinidhi. Balance is indeed key. Let us consider a plan that incorporates both aspects." The discussion continued, with advisors debating the specifics of how to allocate the treasure. Srinidhi observed the dynamics, noting how each advisor brought their unique perspective to the table. As the meeting drew to a close, King Srihari stood, signaling the end of the formal discussion. "We have much to consider, but I am confident that together we will make the best decisions for our kingdom. Thank you all for your insights." King Srihari rose from his ornate throne, his eyes fixed on Srinidhi. The grand hall of the royal palace was filled with the soft murmur of advisors and nobles, all awaiting the king's next words. Tall, arched windows bathed the room in the golden light of the setting sun, casting long shadows on the polished marble floor. "Srinidhi," King Srihari's voice resonated through the hall, commanding immediate silence. "You have journeyed far, faced unimaginable dangers, and emerged victorious. Your bravery has brought not only the golden treasure to our kingdom, but also a wealth of wisdom. Today, we seek to hear your insights. Srinidhi, standing tall in his warrior's garb, stepped forward. His eyes met those of King Srihari, a silent acknowledgement of the trust placed in him. The weight of responsibility hung heavy in the air, yet it was matched by a palpable sense of anticipation. "Your Majesty," Srinidhi began, his voice steady and clear, "this journey has taught me many lessons. The treasure we sought was not merely gold, but the realization of our kingdom's potential, the strength, resilience, and unity of our people." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The advisors leaned forward, their curiosity piqued. "Throughout our quest," Srinidhi continued, "I was reminded time and again of the importance of wisdom and guidance. Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar's teachings were invaluable, grounding me even in the face of the unknown." A murmur of agreement rippled through the hall as the advisors nodded. Srinidhi's eyes then found Arya and Tharun, who stood at the back of the hall, their presence a comforting reminder of the camaraderie that had seen them through their trials. "Moreover," Srinidhi added, his voice taking on a more personal tone, "the journey was not mine alone. Arya's precision and quick thinking saved us on numerous occasions, and Tharun's unwavering loyalty and strength were our bedrock. It is through such unity that we overcame each challenge." Arya's cheeks flushed slightly under the collective gaze, while Tharun stood a little straighter, pride evident in his stance. Their contributions had not gone unnoticed. King Srihari nodded thoughtfully. "Your journey has indeed been a testament to the strength of our people. What do you propose we do with the treasure to ensure it benefits all of Boripura?" Srinidhi took a deep breath, the memories of their journey flashing before his eyes. "I believe we should focus on building our future through education and healthcare," he said. "A portion of the treasure can be used to establish schools, ensuring that knowledge and wisdom continue to flourish. Another portion can strengthen our healthcare, providing for the well-being of every citizen." The hall buzzed with whispers of approval. King Srihari's gaze softened, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Your insights are wise, Srinidhi. Your journey has not only enriched our kingdom with treasure, but also with the promise of a brighter future." Srinidhi bowed deeply, the weight on his shoulders lightened by the recognition and acceptance of his proposals. As he straightened, he felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that the journey had come full circle, not just for him, but for the entire kingdom of Boripura. The grand hall of the royal palace buzzed with an undercurrent of anticipation and tension. King Srihari sat at the head of the long, ornately carved table, his regal presence commanding the room. Flanked by his most trusted advisors, he listened intently as Srinidhi concluded his recounting of the journey to Samudhram and the retrieval of the golden treasure. A moment of silence followed, reverberating through the high vaulted ceiling. The advisors exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and contemplation at the enormity of the treasure's potential. Finally, the king's chief advisor, a bearded man with eyes sharp as a hawk's, leaned forward. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice measured, "we must deliberate carefully on how to utilize this treasure. It could rebuild our defenses, modernize our infrastructure, or perhaps even expand our territories." Another advisor, a woman with silver hair and a gentle yet firm demeanor, interjected. "We should consider investing in our people's welfare. Education, healthcare, and trade could bring long-term prosperity." The debate ignited at once, advisors raising points and counterpoints. Srinidhi observed quietly, his eyes scanning the room. He saw not just the strategic minds at play, but the very essence of Boripura's governance. This was a kingdom where every voice, every perspective was weighed and valued. King Srihari raised his hand, and the room fell silent. His gaze turned towards Srinidhi, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Srinidhi, you have faced the dangers of this quest and returned with both treasure and wisdom. Your insights are invaluable. What do you believe we should do?" Srinidhi felt the weight of the moment, the eyes of the entire room upon him. He thought back to the journey, to the perils and revelations, and to the faces of Arya and Tharun, who stood with him through every trial. He remembered the villagers whose blessings had sent him forth and whose hopes now rested on the decisions made here. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady and clear, "the treasure is indeed vast and holds great potential for our kingdom. However, its true value lies in how it can uplift and unite our people. We have seen the strength of unity and the power of knowledge and resilience on our journey. I believe we should use the treasure to empower our citizens by building schools, improving healthcare, and ensuring that every person in Boripura can contribute to and benefit from our shared prosperity. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and King Srihari nodded thoughtfully. Your words reflect the wisdom of your journey, Srinidhi. Let us chart a course that honors the sacrifices made and the lessons learned. The debate continued, but now it was infused with a renewed sense of purpose. Discussions flowed, ideas intermingled, and a collective vision began to take shape. Srinidhi felt a swell of pride and responsibility, knowing that his journey had not only brought back a treasure, but had also sown the seeds for a brighter future. As the advisors reached a consensus, King Srihari rose, his voice resonating with authority and hope. We shall invest in our people's future, strengthening our kingdom from within. Let this treasure be a beacon of prosperity and unity for all of Boripura. The room erupted in applause, and as Srinidhi met the eyes of his companions, he saw in them a reflection of his own determination. They had faced the depths of Samudhram and emerged not just as triumphant warriors, but as harbingers of a new dawn for their land. The morning sun bathed Boripura in a golden glow, casting long shadows across the bustling village streets. Srinidhi strolled through the marketplace, his heart swelling with pride and satisfaction as he witnessed the transformation taking place around him. Where once there were crumbling buildings and worn-out pathways, now stood newly constructed homes and meticulously paved roads. The air buzzed with the sounds of hammers, saws, and the cheerful chatter of villagers. A group of children ran past Srinidhi, their laughter ringing out like a chorus of joy. He smiled as he watched them disappear around a corner, their bright faces a testament to the newfound hope that had spread throughout the kingdom. He continued walking, his eyes taking in the vibrant scene around him. Merchants displayed their wares with renewed vigor, their stalls brimming with fresh produce and finely crafted goods. The once dusty market now thrived with life and color, a stark contrast to the desolation it had known before the treasure's discovery. As Srinidhi approached the village square, he noticed a crowd gathered around a newly erected fountain. The intricate carvings on its stone surface depicted scenes from his journey, each detail painstakingly etched to honor the trials and triumphs he had faced. Villagers dipped their hands into the crystal-clear water, their faces reflecting gratitude and reverence. Srinidhi's heart swelled with a mixture of humility and pride, knowing that his efforts had brought such positive change to his homeland. A voice called out to him, and he turned to see an elderly woman approaching. Her weathered face broke into a warm smile as she reached out to grasp his hand. "Srinidhi, my boy," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You have brought light to our lives. The treasure has done wonders for our village, but it is your bravery and sacrifice that we shall never forget." Srinidhi bowed his head in respect, feeling the weight of her words. "It was a journey I could not have completed alone," he replied. "Arya and Tharun stood by my side through every challenge. Together, we have achieved something truly remarkable." The woman nodded, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Indeed, you have. Look around you, Srinidhi. The children laugh, the merchants prosper, and our homes are renewed. We owe you a debt of gratitude that cannot be repaid." Srinidhi felt a lump form in his throat as he looked around, truly absorbing the impact of their efforts. He continued his walk, pausing to speak with villagers who eagerly shared their stories of transformation. A farmer proudly showed off his newly expanded fields, made possible by the irrigation systems funded by the treasure. A group of young apprentices demonstrated their skills at the blacksmith's forge, their faces alight with the promise of a brighter future. As he neared the edge of the village, Srinidhi's thoughts turned to the next steps. The treasure had brought immediate relief and improvement, but he knew that sustaining this progress would require ongoing effort and vigilance. He resolved to work closely with King Srihari and the advisors to ensure that the treasure's benefits would be long-lasting and far-reaching. Srinidhi's path led him to a newly built bridge spanning a once impassable river. He paused at the center, leaning against the sturdy railing as he gazed at the flowing waters below. The bridge was a symbol of connection and progress, a tangible representation of the kingdom's resilience and determination. As he stood there, lost in thought, a familiar voice broke through his reverie. "Pondering the future, are we?" Arya approached, her bow slung over her shoulder and a playful glint in her eye. Srinidhi chuckled, turning to face her. "Always," he replied. "Our work is far from over. The treasure is just the beginning." Arya nodded, her expression growing serious. "True, but for now, let us take a moment to appreciate what we have achieved. The people are happy, and the kingdom is flourishing. We deserve to savor this victory." Srinidhi smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "You're right, we have come a long way, and there is much to be thankful for." He looked out over the village, his heart swelling with a sense of fulfillment and hope. Together, they stood on the bridge, watching as the villagers went about their day, their lives forever changed by the journey that had brought them to this moment. The sun cast a warm glow over Boripura, its light dancing across the newly constructed building that stood as a beacon of hope and progress. The air was filled with the scent of fresh timber and the sound of children's laughter, a joyful symphony that brought a smile to Srinidhi's face as he approached the entrance of the new school. Draped in his warrior's attire, yet with a gentleness in his step, Srinidhi surveyed the bustling scene. Teachers moved about, organizing books and arranging desks, while children, their eyes wide with excitement, peeked through doorways and windows, eager for the day's events to unfold. The school was a testament to the kingdom's newfound prosperity, a direct result of the golden treasure that had been unearthed from the depths of Samudhram. "Srinidhi!" A group of children ran towards him, their faces alight with admiration. "Is it true you fought a three-headed lion?" one of the boys asked, his voice filled with awe. Srinidhi knelt down, meeting the child's gaze. "Yes, it is true. But remember, bravery is not just about fighting monsters. It is also about standing up for what is right and helping others." The children nodded, absorbing his words with the earnestness only the young possess. As they scampered away to join their friends, Srinidhi rose and continued his walk towards the main hall, where a gathering had begun. Inside, the hall buzzed with energy. Teachers, adorned in simple yet elegant robes, greeted Srinidhi with respect. One of the teachers, a woman with kind eyes and a serene smile, stepped forward. "Welcome, Srinidhi. We are honored to have you here for the opening ceremony." "The honor is mine," Srinidhi replied, his voice steady and warm. "This school represents the future of Boripura. May it be a place where knowledge and wisdom flourish." The teacher nodded appreciatively and led Srinidhi to a podium adorned with fresh flowers. As he took his place, the room quieted, all eyes on the hero who had brought so much to their land. Srinidhi cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the faces before him. Today marks a new beginning for Boripura. This school is not just a building. It is a symbol of our commitment to education and the betterment of our people. Knowledge is the greatest treasure one can possess, and it is through learning that we grow stronger. The crowd murmured in agreement, and Srinidhi continued. "I have seen many wonders on my journey, faced many challenges, but it is the wisdom imparted by my guru, Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar, and the lessons learned from my companions, Arya and Tharun, that have truly shaped me. Let this school be a place where such wisdom is shared and cherished." A round of applause filled the hall, resonating with hope and promise. As Srinidhi stepped down from the podium, he was approached by a young girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old. She held out a small, hand-drawn map, her eyes shy but determined. "For you, sir," she said softly. "It's a map to my favorite secret spot in the forest. Maybe you can find more treasures there." Srinidhi accepted the map with a smile, bending down to her level. "Thank you, young one. I will treasure this gift. And remember, the greatest treasures are often found in the simplest of places." The girl beamed, and as she joined her classmates, Srinidhi felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey to Samudhram had been fraught with peril, but it was moments like these that made every challenge worthwhile. As the ceremony concluded, Srinidhi took a moment to walk through the classrooms, observing the children as they settled into their new environment. The walls were adorned with colorful murals depicting scenes from Boripura's rich history and mythical tales. Teachers engaged with their students, fostering an environment of curiosity and respect. In one corner, a young boy struggled with his letters, his brow furrowed in concentration. Srinidhi approached him, offering a gentle word of encouragement. "Do not be disheartened." The boy looked up, his face lighting up with a newfound determination. "Thank you, sir. I will." As Srinidhi exited the school, he glanced back one last time, taking in the sight of the thriving hub of learning. The future of Boripura was bright, and it was the children who would lead the way. Srinidhi walked through the bustling streets of Boripura, the sun casting a warm, golden hue over the newly constructed buildings. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, a stark contrast to the tension and uncertainty that had once gripped the kingdom. He approached the grand entrance of the new hospital, its white walls gleaming in the sunlight. The building stood as a testament to the kingdom's newfound prosperity, its architecture blending seamlessly with the natural beauty of the surrounding landscape. As he crossed the threshold, the cool air inside the hospital embraced him, carrying with it the faint scent of medicinal herbs and the sound of hushed voices. Doctors in pristine white robes moved with purpose, attending to patients with a sense of calm efficiency. Srinidhi's presence drew the attention of everyone in the room, their faces lighting up with gratitude and admiration. A seasoned physician, Dr. Varun, approached Srinidhi with a respectful bow. "Welcome, Srinidhi. It is an honor to have you here. This hospital stands because of your bravery and the treasure you brought back." Srinidhi nodded, a modest smile playing on his lips. "The honor is mine, Dr. Varun. It is heartening to see the treasure being used for such a noble cause." Dr. Varun guided Srinidhi through the hospital, showcasing the various wards and facilities. "This is our emergency ward," he explained, pointing to a spacious room filled with patients receiving immediate care. "Thanks to the resources we now have, we can provide better treatment and save more lives." As they walked, Srinidhi observed the patients, their faces reflecting a mixture of pain and hope. He watched as a nurse gently tended to a young boy with a bandaged arm, her soothing words bringing comfort to the child. The sight filled his heart with a profound sense of purpose. In the maternity ward, Srinidhi saw mothers cradling their newborns, their eyes brimming with joy and relief. One mother, upon noticing Srinidhi, beckoned him over. She held out her baby, a tiny bundle wrapped in soft cloth. "This is my son, born in this very hospital," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We named him after you, Srinidhi, to honor your heroism." Srinidhi's eyes softened as he gently touched the baby's forehead. "May he grow strong and wise, and may he bring as much joy to your life as you have brought to mine with this gesture." They continued their tour, arriving at the surgical ward where a team of surgeons worked meticulously on a patient. Dr. Varun spoke with pride. "With the advanced equipment we now possess, complex surgeries that were once impossible in our kingdom can now be performed." Srinidhi marveled at the sight, the intricate dance of the surgeons a testament to the progress and hope that had taken root in Boripura. As they exited the ward, the sound of a bell ringing in the distance signaled the arrival of a new patient. A young woman on a stretcher was wheeled in, her face pale and etched with pain. Dr. Varun immediately sprang into action, his voice calm and authoritative as he directed the staff. Seeing the doctors and nurses work with such dedication and expertise, Srinidhi felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The treasure had indeed brought change, not just in material wealth, but in the very essence of the kingdom's spirit. It had empowered the people to build a better future, to heal and grow. As he prepared to leave, Srinidhi turned to Dr. Varun. "Thank you for showing me around. The work you and your team are doing is truly remarkable. I am proud to have played a part in this transformation." Dr. Varun clasped Srinidhi's hand firmly. "And we are forever indebted to you, Srinidhi. The people of Boripura will remember your courage and sacrifice for generations to come." With a final nod, Srinidhi stepped out of the hospital, the sunlight once again warming his face. He took a moment to breathe in the fresh air, his heart swelling with pride and hope. The journey to Samudhram had been fraught with peril, but standing amidst the thriving kingdom, he knew it had all been worth it. The treasure had not just changed the fate of Boripura, it had changed his own, shaping him into a leader and a beacon of hope for his people. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the outskirts of Boripura, a palpable tension hung in the air. The villagers, usually bustling with the end-of-day activities, now clustered in anxious groups, their whispers carried away by the gentle breeze. The serene landscape of lush forests and rolling hills seemed to belie the undercurrent of unease. Srinidhi stood tall, his eyes scanning the distant tree line with a mixture of concern and determination. He had just returned from inspecting the new hospital, his heart warmed by the progress his kingdom was making. Yet the news that had reached him threatened to overshadow their achievements. A group of messengers, dusty and weary from their long journey, approached Srinidhi, their faces etched with urgency. One of them, a young man with sharp eyes and a resolute expression, stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Srinidhi Ranganathan," he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of his message. "We bring urgent news. A dark force is gathering outside the kingdom. Strange sightings and ominous signs have been reported by the scouts stationed at the borders." Srinidhi's gaze hardened, his mind racing through the implications of this new threat. "What kind of force are we dealing with?" he asked, his voice commanding yet calm. The messenger hesitated for a moment before replying. "The scouts speak of shadowy figures, moving with unnatural speed and stealth. There are whispers of dark magic at play, and the presence of creatures we have never encountered before." As the words settled in the air, a chill seemed to creep into the atmosphere. Srinidhi clenched his fists, his thoughts turning to the people of Boripura. The kingdom had faced many challenges, but this threat seemed to carry an air of malevolence that was unlike anything they had encountered. "We must alert King Srihari immediately," Srinidhi said, his voice resolute. "The kingdom must prepare for whatever lies ahead." The messengers nodded and quickly made their way back towards the palace, their urgency mirrored in the quickening pace of their steps. Srinidhi turned to the villagers who had gathered nearby, their faces a mix of fear and hope. He knew that his role as a leader went beyond wielding a sword. It was also about inspiring confidence and unity. "People of Boripura," he called out, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "We face a new challenge, one that requires our collective strength and courage. Trust in your king, in your warriors, and in each other. We will stand together and protect our land." The villagers responded with nods and murmurs of agreement, their initial fear giving way to a collective resolve. Srinidhi's presence, his calm yet powerful demeanor, seemed to instill a sense of hope and determination. As the crowd began to disperse, returning to their homes with a renewed sense of purpose, Srinidhi made his way towards the palace. The weight of the news pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he knew that he was not alone in this fight. With King Srihari's strategic mind and the kingdom's unwavering spirit, they would face this dark force head-on. The journey to the palace was swift, the path familiar, yet fraught with an urgency that quickened Srinidhi's steps. The flickering torches along the way cast long shadows, and the cool night air brought a clarity to his thoughts. He knew that the next few days would be crucial in determining the fate of Boripura. As he approached the grand gates of the palace, the guards recognized him immediately and ushered him inside. The corridors were alive with the hurried movements of advisors and soldiers, all aware of the impending threat. Srinidhi's heart swelled with pride at the sight of his kingdom's readiness. He was swiftly led to the council chamber, where King Srihari awaited him. The king's eyes, wise and piercing, met Srinidhi's with a mixture of concern and resolve. Without a word, they both knew that the time for action had come. Srinidhi bowed deeply. "My king, the messengers have brought dire news. A dark force gathers at our borders, one that we must prepare to face." King Srihari nodded, his expression grave but unwavering. "We will convene a council immediately. Our kingdom has faced many trials, and we have emerged stronger each time. This will be no different." The grand hall of the royal palace was bathed in a warm golden light as the late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows. King Srihari sat at the head of a long, ornately carved table, his regal presence commanding the attention of all in the room. His advisors, a mix of seasoned generals and wise counselors, were gathered around, their faces etched with concern. Srinidhi stood to the king's right, his armor gleaming under the light, a silent testament to his readiness. The room buzzed with a palpable tension as discussions of the dark force gathering outside the kingdom filled the air. King Srihari's voice broke through the murmur, calm yet authoritative. "We have received troubling reports of a dark force amassing near our borders. We must devise a strategy to defend our kingdom." One of the generals, an older man with a scar running down his cheek, leaned forward. "Your Majesty, we should fortify our defenses along the eastern front. It is the most vulnerable and likely the first point of attack." Another advisor, a woman known for her strategic acumen, disagreed. "While the eastern front is vulnerable, we must also consider the possibility of a diversion. The enemy may strike from another direction. We need to be prepared on all fronts." Srinidhi listened intently, his mind racing with thoughts of the impending threat. He knew the weight of responsibility that lay on his shoulders. The memories of his recent quest, the battles fought, and the wisdom gained all surged within him, guiding his thoughts. "Your Majesty," Srinidhi began, his voice steady but filled with determination, "I agree that we must fortify our defenses. However, we must also gather intelligence on this dark force. We need to understand their numbers, their strengths, and their weaknesses. Only then can we plan an effective defense." King Srihari nodded, his eyes reflecting trust and respect for the young warrior. "Srinidhi speaks wisely. We must act swiftly and intelligently. General, assign scouts to gather information on the enemy's movements. We need reports as soon as possible." The general bowed his head in acknowledgement. "It will be done, Your Majesty." Another advisor, a man with a scholarly demeanor, spoke up. "We should also consider the morale of our people. News of this dark force will spread quickly. We must ensure that our citizens feel safe and protected." King Srihari's expression softened as he considered the advisor's words. "You are right. We must maintain the trust and confidence of our people. Srinidhi, I task you with addressing the citizens. Your recent triumph has made you a symbol of hope. Your words will carry weight." Srinidhi bowed slightly, accepting the responsibility. "I will do my best to reassure them, Your Majesty." The discussions continued, with various plans and strategies being debated. The tension in the room remained high, but there was also a sense of unity and purpose. Each advisor brought their expertise to the table, contributing to a cohesive plan to defend Boripura. As the meeting drew to a close, King Srihari stood, his presence commanding the room's attention once more. "We have faced many challenges, and we have always emerged stronger." The advisors nodded in agreement, their resolve strengthened by the king's words. Srinidhi felt a surge of determination within him. He knew that the battles ahead would be fierce, but he also knew that together they would prevail. As the meeting adjourned, Srinidhi lingered for a moment, his eyes meeting King Srihari's. There was a silent exchange of understanding and trust. With the king's guidance and the support of his companions, Srinidhi was ready to face whatever came next. The royal barracks of Boripura thrummed with an undercurrent of urgency. The air, usually filled with the disciplined murmurs and clangs of routine training, now resonated with a more intense fervor. Soldiers moved with a purposeful haste, their faces set in grim determination. Their armor, freshly polished, gleamed under the midday sun, casting fleeting glints of light across the courtyard. Srinidhi stood at the center, his presence commanding and resolute. His eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the bustling scene before him. He wore his battle gear with the ease of someone who had lived a lifetime in it, every piece perfectly fitted and functional. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, a silent testament to the readiness he demanded from himself and his men. "Form up!" he called out, his voice carrying over the din. The soldiers, hearing the authority in his tone, quickly assembled into neat rows, their movements synchronized and precise. Srinidhi walked down the lines, inspecting each warrior with a critical eye. His gaze lingered on their faces, searching for any sign of doubt or hesitation. Arya, ever the vigilant archer, was at his side, her bow slung across her back and a quiver of arrows at her hip. She moved with a fluid grace, her keen eyes missing nothing. Tharun, his childhood friend and steadfast ally, was on the other side. His broad shoulders and muscular frame gave him an imposing presence, yet his eyes held a warmth and loyalty that was unmistakable. "Remember," Srinidhi began, his voice steady and clear, "we face a threat unlike any we have encountered before. But we are the warriors of Boripura. We fight not just for ourselves, but for our families, our friends, and our future." A murmur of agreement rippled through the ranks. The soldiers straightened, their resolve visibly strengthening. Srinidhi continued, "Our strength lies in our unity. Trust in each other, and we will overcome whatever darkness approaches." Arya stepped forward, her voice carrying a calm confidence. "We have trained for this moment. Our skills are sharp, our minds focused. We will protect Boripura with everything we have." Tharun nodded, adding, "And we do not stand alone. We have each other, and together we are unstoppable." Srinidhi couldn't help but feel a surge of pride at their words. They echoed his own sentiments, reinforcing the bond that had been forged through countless trials. He turned to address the entire assembly once more. "Prepare yourselves. Check your weapons, your armor. Ensure you are ready for whatever comes our way. We march at dawn." With a final nod, he dismissed the soldiers to their preparations. The courtyard erupted into a flurry of activity once more, but this time there was a palpable sense of purpose. Every movement, every action was deliberate and focused. Srinidhi walked towards the armory, Arya and Tharun flanking him. As they approached, he spoke in a lower voice, meant only for their ears. "We must be vigilant. This dark force, it will test us in ways we cannot yet imagine." Arya's eyes darkened with determination. "We'll be ready, no matter what." Tharun placed a reassuring hand on Srinidhi's shoulder. "We're with you, always." Srinidhi nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude for his companions. Together they would face the coming storm, and together they would emerge victorious. The air was electric with anticipation as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield outside Boripura. The once serene plains were now filled with the muffled sounds of armor clinking, hushed conversations, and the occasional neigh of horses preparing for the impending clash. Srinidhi stood at the forefront, his gaze sweeping over the assembled warriors, each one a testament to the kingdom's resilience and courage. Arya, her bow slung across her back and quiver bristling with arrows, moved with a quiet confidence as she inspected the archers under her command. Her keen eyes missed nothing, adjusting stances, correcting grips, and offering words of encouragement. Tharun, ever the stalwart companion, was at her side, his presence a steadying influence. His hand rested lightly on the hilt of his sword, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. "Remember," Srinidhi's voice cut through the din, calm yet commanding, "we fight not just for ourselves, but for our families, our homes, our future. Stand strong, and let no darkness take what is ours." A murmur of agreement rippled through the ranks, a collective resolve hardening against the encroaching threat. Arya shot Srinidhi a look, a mixture of determination and unspoken trust. They had faced countless perils together, and today would be no different. "Archers, to your positions!" Arya called out, her voice ringing clear and authoritative. The archers moved swiftly, taking their places with practiced precision, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Tharun stepped closer to Srinidhi, his expression serious. "We've trained for this, my friend. Whatever comes, we face it together." Srinidhi clasped Tharun's shoulder, their bond forged in the fires of past battles and tempered by mutual respect. "Together," he echoed, the simple word carrying the weight of their shared history. As the last light of day waned, the first signs of the enemy emerged from the shadows, a dark mass advancing with an eerie silence that belied their numbers. The ground seemed to tremble beneath their approach, a palpable sense of foreboding hanging in the air. Srinidhi raised his sword high, the signal for the archers to ready their arrows. The tension was almost unbearable, each heartbeat a countdown to the inevitable clash. Arya's eyes narrowed, her focus absolute as she drew her bow, the string taut and waiting for the command. "Hold, hold." Srinidhi's voice was a steady anchor in the rising tide of fear and anticipation. He watched the enemy draw closer, the first lines becoming distinguishable in the dim light. The dark force was a formidable sight, an army clad in shadow, their leader a towering figure exuding an aura of malevolence. "Fire!" The command was given, and in an instant the sky was filled with a hail of arrows, each one a streak of defiance against the encroaching darkness. The arrows found their marks, but the enemy pressed on, undeterred by the initial volley. With a fierce battle cry, Srinidhi led the charge, his sword gleaming in the twilight as he plunged into the fray. Arya's arrows flew with deadly accuracy, each shot a testament to her skill and unwavering resolve. Tharun's blade danced through the melee, his movements a blur of lethal precision. The clash of steel against steel, the cries of warriors, and the roar of the enemy filled the air, a chaotic symphony of war. Srinidhi fought with the strength of 1,000, his every strike fueled by the desire to protect his homeland. Arya and Tharun were at his side, their presence a constant reminder that he was not alone in this fight. As the battle raged on, the tide seemed to shift, the warriors of Boripura holding their ground against the relentless onslaught. But the true test was yet to come, the leader of the Dark Force still a looming threat on the horizon. Srinidhi knew that this battle was only the beginning, a prelude to the greater challenge that lay ahead. Amidst the cacophony of clashing steel and the cries of warriors, Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun fought with unwavering resolve. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and the metallic tang of blood. Each swing of Srinidhi's sword was a testament to his relentless determination. Every arrow loosed by Arya a beacon of precision, and each of Tharun's parries a shield of loyalty. Suddenly, a chilling silence swept across the battlefield, as if time itself held its breath. Emerging from the shadows, the Dark Force's leader stepped forward, his presence commanding and ominous. Clad in dark, twisted armor that seemed to absorb the light, he wielded an intricately designed staff, its tip glowing with an eerie, otherworldly energy. Srinidhi's eyes narrowed, recognizing the malevolent aura surrounding this figure. Arya's bowstring remained taut, her gaze fixed on the new adversary, while Tharun's grip on his sword tightened, muscles coiled like a spring, ready to unleash. "You must be the leader of this accursed force," Srinidhi declared, his voice steady despite the turmoil within him. The leader's laughter was a low, rumbling sound, as if the earth itself mocked their efforts. "I am Varun, the harbinger of your kingdom's demise," he proclaimed, his voice a sinister whisper that carried across the battlefield. "Your precious land and its people will fall, and there is nothing you can do to stop us." Varun's eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the trio. "You are brave, I will give you that, but bravery alone will not save you." Arya, her voice firm and resolute, countered, "We are not just brave, we are fighting for our home, and that gives us strength beyond your understanding." Varun's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Strength? You speak of strength while your kingdom crumbles?" He raised his staff, and the ground beneath them trembled, dark tendrils of energy snaking outwards, grasping at the feet of the soldiers around them. Srinidhi, sensing the growing danger, shouted, "Hold your ground! Do not let fear take you." His words infused the warriors with renewed courage, their formations tightening as they braced against the encroaching darkness. Tharun stepped forward, his voice a roar of defiance. "We've faced greater perils and emerged victorious. You will be no different." Varun's eyes flickered with a dangerous light. "Then let us see if your resolve is as unbreakable as you claim." With a swift motion, he unleashed a wave of dark energy, aimed directly at Srinidhi. Srinidhi raised his sword, the blade glowing with a golden light as it met the dark energy head-on. The clash of forces sent shockwaves through the battlefield, pushing both sides momentarily apart. Amid the chaos, Arya spotted an opening. She notched an arrow, her fingers steady despite the trembling earth. With a swift release, the arrow flew true, aimed at Varun's heart. But Varun, with supernatural reflexes, deflected it with a flick of his staff, sending the arrow spiraling into the ground. Srinidhi, seizing the moment, charged forward, his sword poised to strike. Varun met him with equal ferocity, their weapons clashing in a storm of sparks. The battle between them was not just of physical strength, but of wills, each determined to outlast the other. Tharun and Arya fought off the encroaching forces, their movements synchronized, each protecting the other's flank. The bond between the three was evident, a seamless blend of strength, precision, and loyalty. Varun, sensing the tide turning against him, unleashed another wave of dark energy, forcing Srinidhi back. "This is not over," he hissed. retreating into the shadows, his form dissipating like smoke. As the dark forces began to withdraw, the battlefield fell into an uneasy silence. Srinidhi, panting and bloodied, looked towards Arya and Thorun, their eyes reflecting the same mixture of relief and determination. "We've won this battle," Srinidhi said, his voice resolute. "But the war is far from over." Arya nodded, her bow still ready. "We will stand together, no matter what comes." Thorun sheathed his sword, his expression grim but resolute. "For Boripura, we will fight until our last breath." The clang of steel against steel reverberated across the battlefield, a symphony of survival and strife. Srinidhi's sword met the blade of a dark force soldier, sparks flying from the collision. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and blood, the ground beneath them slick with the remnants of their fallen foes. He glanced to his left, catching sight of Arya in the midst of the fray, her bowstring taut as she released an arrow that found its mark in the chest of a charging enemy. Her eyes, fierce and unwavering, mirrored the determination that coursed through his veins. Thorun fought with relentless vigor by his side, their movements synchronized as if they were extensions of each other's will. With a swift, calculated strike, Thorun felled another adversary, turning just in time to parry an incoming attack aimed at Srinidhi. "Stay sharp, my friend," Thorun called, his voice steady despite the chaos that enveloped them. Srinidhi nodded, his focus unbroken. Every strike, every parry was fueled by a singular purpose: to protect Boripura. The Dark Force's leader, a menacing figure clad in shadowy armor, barked orders to his minions, his voice a chilling contrast to the battle's cacophony. Srinidhi knew that defeating this leader was key to their victory, but the path to him was littered with peril. A sudden surge from the enemy lines pushed them back momentarily. Srinidhi felt the sting of a blade graze his arm, warm blood seeping through his tunic. He gritted his teeth, the pain only adding to his resolve. "Hold the line!" he shouted, rallying his warriors for Boripura. Arya's arrows continued to fly with deadly precision, each one a testament to her unerring aim. She moved with an almost ethereal grace, her movements fluid and purposeful. Amidst the chaos, her eyes met Srinidhi's for a fleeting moment, a silent exchange of mutual trust and unspoken words. They were in this together, bound by a shared destiny and the unyielding spirit of their homeland. The Dark Force's soldiers began to falter under the relentless onslaught of Boripura's warriors. Thorun, ever the stalwart companion, cut through their ranks with a ferocity that belied his usual calm demeanor. "We're pushing them back," he exclaimed, his voice carrying a note of triumph. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, the battlefield seemed to slow. Srinidhi saw the Dark Force's leader fix his gaze upon him, a predatory gleam in his eyes. The challenge was clear, and Srinidhi accepted it without hesitation. He surged forward, carving a path through the enemy ranks. Behind him, Arya and Thorun followed, their loyalty and trust unwavering. As they drew closer to the Dark Force's leader, the intensity of the battle reached a fever pitch. The air crackled with energy, the clash of weapons, and the cries of the wounded blending into a chaotic symphony. Srinidhi's heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the rhythm of the fight. He could feel the weight of his people's hopes and dreams resting on his shoulders, driving him onward. With a final, powerful thrust, Srinidhi broke through the enemy's defenses, standing face to face with the Dark Force's leader. The two warriors locked eyes, the world around them fading into a blur of motion and sound. This was the moment of reckoning, the culmination of their struggle. Steel met steel once more, and the battle for Boripura's future hung in the balance. The royal palace of Boripura was alive with jubilation. The grand hall, adorned with banners and vibrant tapestries, echoed with the laughter and cheers of the villagers who had gathered to celebrate. The scent of freshly baked bread and roasted meats wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet aroma of flowers arranged in intricate patterns around the room. Musicians played lively tunes on their flutes and drums, filling the space with a joyous melody. King Srihari stood at the head of the hall, his regal presence commanding the attention of all. He wore a richly embroidered robe of deep crimson, the golden crown on his head gleaming under the chandeliers. His eyes sparkled with pride and gratitude as he looked upon his people and the heroes who had safeguarded their future. Srinidhi, still clad in his battle-worn armor, entered the hall, flanked by Arya and Tharun. The crowd erupted into applause and cheers, their admiration palpable. Srinidhi's heart swelled with emotion, the weight of their journey and the recent battles still fresh in his mind. He glanced at Arya and Tharun, both of whom wore expressions of humble pride. King Srihari raised a hand to quiet the crowd. "People of Boripura," he began, his voice resonating through the hall. "Today we celebrate not only the defeat of the dark forces that threatened our land, but also the courage and valor of our heroes. Srinidhi Ranganathan, Arya, and Tharun have shown us the true meaning of bravery and loyalty." The king beckoned them forward, and as they approached, he continued, "Srinidhi, your leadership and unwavering spirit have been an inspiration to us all. Arya, your skill and quick thinking have saved many lives. Tharun, your strength and loyalty have been a pillar of support. Together, you have triumphed over insurmountable odds." Srinidhi bowed deeply, feeling the king's words wash over him. "Thank you, your majesty. It is an honor to serve our kingdom and its people. This victory belongs to all of us." Arya stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. "We fought not just for glory, but for the safety and future of Boripura. Every arrow I loosed, every decision we made, was for our home." Tharun nodded in agreement. "We stand here today because of the strength and unity of our people. This victory is a testament to what we can achieve when we stand together." King Srihari smiled warmly. "Indeed, it is. And now let us celebrate our heroes and the bright future that lies ahead." The hall erupted once more in applause and cheers as the king gestured for the festivities to begin. Tables laden with food and drink were brought forth, and the villagers mingled freely, sharing stories of bravery and triumph. Children ran about, their laughter a sweet counterpoint to the music that continued to fill the air. Srinidhi found himself surrounded by well-wishers, each eager to express their gratitude and admiration. He accepted their praise with humility, his thoughts drifting to the journey that had brought them here. The treacherous forests, the deceitful sorceress, the formidable guardians of Samudhram, all seemed like distant memories now, yet each had left an indelible mark on him. As the evening wore on, Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun found a moment to themselves. They stood together near a balcony, looking out over the illuminated city of Boripura. The night sky was clear, stars twinkling like distant jewels. "To think we've come so far," Arya mused, her voice filled with wonder. "It feels like only yesterday we set out on this journey." Tharun nodded, his gaze distant. "We've faced so much, yet here we are, stronger and wiser." Srinidhi placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Our journey may have been perilous, but it has forged us into who we are today. We've learned, grown, and become better for it." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared experiences binding them closer. The sounds of celebration continued behind them, a reminder of the joy and hope their victory had brought to Boripura. They rejoined the festivities, their spirits lifted by the warmth and gratitude of their people. The streets of Boripura were a tapestry of vibrant colors and joyous sounds. Banners of rich crimson and gold fluttered in the breeze, carrying the kingdom's emblem, a symbol of unity and strength. Villagers thronged the streets, their faces alight with unrestrained joy. Children ran about with garlands of flowers, their laughter mingling with the rhythmic beats of drums and the sweet melodies of flutes. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun walked side by side, their steps synchronized by the bond forged through trials and triumphs. As they moved through the jubilant crowd, villagers reached out to touch their hands, their eyes brimming with gratitude and admiration. Srinidhi's eyes scanned the sea of faces, each one a reminder of the people he had fought to protect. The weight of their adulation settled on his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle of honor. Arya, ever vigilant, noticed a young girl who struggled to see over the crowd. With a swift, graceful movement, Arya lifted the child onto her shoulders, earning a chorus of cheers from those around them. The girl's eyes widened in awe as she found herself at eye level with her heroes. "Thank you, Lady Arya," the girl whispered, her small fingers clutching at Arya's hair for balance. Tharun, his usual stoic demeanor softened by the celebration, clasped hands with an elderly man who had tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "You have given us hope, young warrior," the man said, his voice quivering with emotion. Tharun nodded, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. As they continued, Srinidhi felt a tug on his tunic. He looked down to see a boy, no older than 10, holding a small wooden sword. "My father says you're the bravest warrior in all of Boripura," the boy said, his eyes shining with hero worship. "I want to be just like you when I grow up." Srinidhi knelt down, meeting the boy's gaze. "Bravery comes in many forms, young one," he said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's not just about fighting battles, but also about protecting those you love and standing up for what is right." The boy nodded solemnly, clutching his wooden sword as if it were a sacred relic. The procession led them to a grand dais adorned with flowers and silken drapes. King Srihari stood at its center, his regal presence commanding respect. As the trio ascended the steps, the crowd's cheers grew louder, a thunderous roar of appreciation. The king raised his hands and silence fell, an expectant hush that carried the weight of the moment. "My people," King Srihari began, his voice strong and clear, "today we honor not just the bravery of these warriors, but the spirit of Boripura itself. Srinidhi, Arya, Tharun, you have shown us that true courage lies in the heart, and that through unity we can overcome any darkness." He turned to Srinidhi, his eyes filled with paternal pride. "Srinidhi, you have led with wisdom and strength. Your journey was fraught with peril, yet you emerged victorious, not just in battle, but in spirit." The king placed a golden medallion around Srinidhi's neck, its weight a testament to his achievements. "Arya," King Srihari continued, "your sharp eye and steady hand have saved many lives. Your bravery is matched only by your compassion." He presented Arya with a bow encrusted with emeralds, a symbol of her skill and dedication. "And Tharun," the king said, turning to the swordsman, "your unwavering loyalty and strength have been a pillar of support. You are a true friend and a formidable warrior." Tharun received a sword of the finest steel, its hilt inlaid with rubies, a reflection of his fiery spirit. The king stepped back, allowing the three to stand before their people. The crowd erupted once more, the sound a living entity that wrapped around them, lifting their spirits even higher. Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared, and the bond that would forever tie them to the land of Boripura. As the celebration continued, the trio moved through the crowd, sharing stories and laughter. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers and the savory aroma of feasts being prepared. The sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the joyous throng, a fitting end to a day of triumph and unity. Srinidhi walked through the bustling market square, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. Arya strolled beside him, her bow slung over her shoulder, and Tharun on his other side, his sword gleaming in the sunlight. Laughter and music echoed through the streets as villagers danced, their faces alight with joy and relief. The air was filled with the scent of freshly baked bread and blooming jasmine, and the hum of contentment buzzed like bees among the flowers. They exchanged smiles with passing villagers, each greeting laced with admiration and heartfelt thanks. It was a stark contrast to the tension and peril they had faced on their journey. As they moved through the crowd, Srinidhi noticed the changes that had begun to take root in Boripura. New buildings were being constructed, children ran through the streets in new clothes, and the elderly sat with serene expressions, no longer burdened by the worries that had once plagued them. The golden treasure, now utilized for the betterment of the kingdom, had already started to weave its magic into the fabric of their lives. They paused at the newly built school, where a group of children gathered around a teacher who was animatedly recounting tales of bravery and adventure. Srinidhi smiled as he listened to the teacher's words, feeling a sense of fulfillment. The quest had not only brought tangible wealth, but also a renewed spirit and hope for the future. Arya nudged him gently. "Look at them, Srinidhi. They are the future of Boripura. Because of you, they have a brighter path ahead." He shook his head humbly. "Because of us, Arya. It was our journey, our battles, and our triumphs that made this possible." Tharun chuckled, clapping a hand on Srinidhi's shoulder. "And who knows what new adventures await them? Maybe one day they will have their own quests to undertake." As they continued walking, they reached the edge of the village, where the lush forests began. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, whispering secrets of ages past. Srinidhi took a deep breath, the scent of pine and earth grounding him. A group of elders, including Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar, approached them, their eyes twinkling with wisdom and pride. The sage's presence was a comforting reminder of the guidance that had steered Srinidhi through his darkest moments. "Srinidhi," the guru began, his voice resonating with calm authority, "your journey has shown us the strength of unity and the power of courage. The future of Boripura is now in the hands of those who will carry forward this legacy of valor and wisdom." Srinidhi bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Guruji. Your teachings were the beacon that guided me." Mr. Mohan Leela Shankar nodded, his gaze shifting to Arya and Tharun. "And you both have proven to be steadfast companions, embodying loyalty and bravery. The bonds you share are unbreakable and will continue to shape the destiny of our land." Arya and Tharun bowed in gratitude, their faces reflecting the deep respect they held for the sage. As the sun began to set, casting a warm amber glow over the landscape, Srinidhi, Arya, and Tharun found themselves at the hill overlooking Boripura. They sat in silence for a moment, taking in the view of their beloved home, now brimming with hope and promise. Srinidhi's mind wandered back to the submerged city of Samudhram, the trials they had faced, and the lessons they had learned. He realized that while the quest had been fraught with danger, it had also been a journey of self-discovery and growth. Arya broke the silence, her voice soft but resolute. "We did it, Srinidhi. We brought back more than just treasure. We brought back hope." Tharun nodded, his eyes reflecting the fading light, "And we will continue to protect this hope, no matter what challenges lie ahead." Srinidhi smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Together, we will face whatever comes, for Boripura, for our people, and for the future." As night fell, the stars began to twinkle in the vast sky, mirroring the glow of the torches that lined the village streets. The kingdom of Boripura stood united, its people ready to embrace the future with courage and gratitude, inspired by the heroes who had led them through the darkness into the light.